How many of you can say you are true Five Nights at Freddy experts? Regardless of your answer, I can tell you that I sure was more of a fan than you. That's for the fact that I wasn't a normal fan. I was obsessed with the game, and as you know, no obsession is healthy, but I never thought mine would take me to such dark places as it took me. At that time, it was early 2015, and Five Nights at Freddy's 2 had been out for a few months. By that point, everybody had figured out the vast majority of the game's secrets, or so everyone thought. At the time, I was on Reddit a lot, and there were rumors that Scott, the game's creator, made a pact with the devil for the game to do well. It was said that there was a reference to this in the game, but it was so well hidden that even the best data miners couldn't find it. The only way was to stumble upon it. I was only 16 years old. I was really obsessed with discovering this secret. In the beginning, I did the same as everyone else. I tried different difficulties with all the animatronics until I found a secret number. But no, I had to do something else. And one night, I discovered it.
And remember to take turns at the computer, don't go to sleep so late, and clean the dishes by the time we get there. Understand?
Yes, Mom.
Yes. Toby, you're the big brother. Take good care of your brother, okay?
Dad, don't worry. We don't do more than play with the computer and watch TV.
But not too much. Remember to sleep.
Don't worry, I'll listen to Toby about everything.
We trust you. Take care of yourselves.
That Saturday night, my parents were going to a work party. Since I was a big boy, they could leave my 12-year-old brother in charge of me. As soon as my parents left, I grabbed my notebook and the keys to my parents' room while my brother stayed in ours. Once in my parents' room, I closed the door and started playing Five Nights at Freddy's 2 from bed. I wasn't focused on winning the game. I had already done it hundreds of times. I just wanted to discover the secret. Maybe it was a combination of difficulty, maybe it was related to the mini-games, maybe it was a combination of deaths. Seconds, minutes, hours passed. This was nothing. It didn't bother me that time passed. It had been like this for months. But unlike other times, this time it worked. With a combination of things I did, as soon as I started the third night with a certain difficulty, something strange happened. The game closed by itself. It once opened again. The game started immediately. Everything seemed normal, but something interrupted it. My brother knocked on the door. Not many people know this, but if you press Control and the letter P, you can pause your game. So I did. I was about to go see what my brother wanted, but something surprised me. Was my parents' room always this dark at night? If my brother was knocking on the door, why was there no light coming from underneath it? The light hadn't been cut off, and I could see my notebook was still charging. Clive, what do you want? I'm busy. On the other side, there was only silence. I decided to approach the door and slowly, I opened it. The corridor that connected to my parents' room was totally dark. Clive? Suddenly, someone also started knocking on the bathroom door of the bedroom. It was impossible. Only my brother was in the house, and that bathroom was only connected to this room. What was going on? I looked for my cell phone to call someone, anyone, but I had no signal. All the windows and curtains were closed and could not be opened. I went back to the notebook. Was this the secret level? Is this what I read on Reddit and no one had discovered? Not knowing what to do, I sat back down at the notebook and kept playing. Maybe that was the solution to get out of here. The difficulty of the game was not very high, but I was so nervous that even the easiest thing was a problem. Had I not checked the pipeline? Was I not paying enough attention to the music box? As the game continued, I heard strange noises throughout the room. Those knocks on the door had turned into loud knocks. Those knocks sounded just like the ones in the game. The atmosphere in the room was unbearable. The game was about to end, but I couldn't play anymore because of my nerves. My fingers and hands were shaking. I was sweating non-stop, and every time I tried to breathe, I felt a very intense pain in my chest. Suddenly, And just before the game ended, I ran out of battery in the game. But instead of the lights going off in the game, the notebook monitor went off. My body froze. I couldn't move. The bathroom door slowly opened and I began to hear footsteps coming slowly towards me. When those footsteps reached my side, nothing else happened. I felt something breathing in front of me, but it didn't move. It was just silent.
Ah! Ah! What's wrong with you? You scared me!
Clive? What happened?
Are you out of your mind? I came in to tell you to wash your dishes and you didn't answer me. You just kept playing like a zombie. The game isn't even on high difficulty.
What? The game? When I looked at the game, it was over. Apparently, I had won.
What happened to you? I thought you were making a joke.
No, nothing happened to me.
Whatever. Do the dishes. I don't want Mom to scold me because of you.
That was the last time I ever played any Five Nights at Freddy's again. After that night, I tried to tell everyone what I had experienced, just as I am doing with you. I explained everything in detail. Do you know what everyone did when I told them? They congratulated me. Everyone told me that I created an excellent creepypasta. No one ever believed me that I had really lived this, not even my own brother. You know, today I don't trust anything that happened that day. I don't know if it was real. Maybe I was so obsessed with the game that I was hallucinating. Maybe I was going crazy. But just in case it was real, don't do what I did. Don't get so obsessed with anything. Because if what I went through was real, maybe it'll happen to you. And maybe you won't be so lucky to be able to tell the story.
I had always been curious about the deep web. You hear the craziest stories from people who have been there. Websites that involve human experimentation, hiring a hitman, and even watching people through their own security cameras. The first thing I stumbled upon was a website extremely centered around death, which gave me a really uneasy feeling, so I didn't hang around that webpage very long. Next, I clicked the website that was dedicated to watching people through security cameras. Most of the screens showed empty living rooms and patios. Some of them showed oddly filled rooms, like rooms that were packed with stuffed animals, and another that was eerily decorated with old Halloween props. Something inside me felt ill and just wrong, like what I was doing was sickening. I shook my head, blinking away any more curiosity before I hovered my mouse over the tiny X to close the window. Right before I pressed the mouse, I saw a blue link under a black screen that said, "Proceed at your own risk." My curiosity always got the best of me, and no matter how twisted my stomach felt, I pressed my mouse down and watched the link turn purple. The page opened to a big room. The room was concrete. It was dark. There must have been a night vision camera or something because everything had a weird green tinge. I noticed something in the corner of the room. It looked like an arm, like someone's forearm.
What the heck?
The person now walked toward the middle of the room. It was a young woman. She looked like she couldn't be older than 21 or so. Long, dark, and dirty hair was in tangles. Her one leg was broken at the ankle. She dragged herself with the other leg. Her head was down, looking at the floor. Suddenly, the woman raised her head, and it looked like it weighed a ton on her tiny body. I hadn't noticed it before, only able to barely make out her side profile, but now it was clear as day. She looked around, eyes watering with tears and black makeup streaming down her face. And her lips. Her lips were sewn shut with a white thread. My whole body felt weak. My stomach was sick. I tried to tell myself it was fake, that it was all a big hoax. My eyes scanned to the bottom left of the screen. 10,421 people were watching. The girl suddenly picked up a cardboard and lifted it to the camera. It read,
"If anybody's watching online, please help."
I could hear the muffled crying, having her lips closed. Her voice died down in her throat. I couldn't watch it anymore, so I closed the tab and rushed to my girlfriend.
Bella, you're not gonna believe what I just saw.
Hey, have you been crying?
Look, I know you said to stay away from the deep web, but
Are you kidding me? I told you to stay away from that place. You never listen to me. You never freaking do.
there's a girl. She's trapped in some basement somewhere, and her mouth is... Oh God, her mouth is like sewn shut. There's blood all over her face and hands. I don't know what to do, Bella.
The woman's cries got louder, more desperate, but muffled.
I think I should call the cops.
Don't be stupid. You don't know if it's fake. It's probably staged to gain disgusting viewers, apparently like yourself. So drop it.
I didn't say anything. Wordlessly went to bed. I didn't get much sleep. Every time I closed my eyes or even began to drift off, I would see the woman's face. The thread laced into her lips, red liquid staining her mouth, her fingers, and the floor. I continued to grow more and more anxious and uneasy, deciding that maybe getting out of the house, maybe that'll clear my mind. I grabbed the house keys and came out to the sidewalk. I crossed the road and started walking down the block. 20 minutes into walking, I noticed a black van following me. They were being very sneaky, not making a single sound and moving slowly. I stopped, and the van stopped as well. I was going to confront them, but my phone started ringing. It was my girlfriend, Bella. She must have woken up finding herself alone in the house.
Hey, babe. I'm just out for a stroll. Bella? Hello?
But all I heard was a muffled scream. Bella was screaming with her mouth closed. That's when it hit me. A dread of fear rushed down my spine and I started running back toward the house. I stormed through the door, landing straight into the bedroom. And Bella, she wasn't there.
No, Bella! Bella, where are you?
I got a phone call again from Bella, but this time, a man spoke from the other side.
Hope you stay away from the dark web, kid. It's not for you.
The story you just saw is inspired from this footage speculated of being from the dark web. It starts with a girl sleeping on the floor of a dirty room. A camera has been recording her for the past 13 hours. She has barricaded herself inside and now faced with limited amounts of food. At one point, she notices the camera and huddles in the middle of the room. Eventually, she makes a sign saying she has run out of water, and she asks people who are watching online to help her. She says that she has been kept here for days, but she doesn't know anything about the location. Most of the viewers of this clip believe this to be a live recording of a red room in the deep web. Red rooms are ongoing videos of people being abducted and tortured in live streams. Sadists and psychopaths pay huge amounts of money to see these kinds of videos. But apart from their sick content, clicking on a link of Red Room comes with hacking risk. So, whatever you do, don't surf the dark web.
My name is Charlie, and I have a question to ask you. How much do you know about creepypastas? To be more specific, how much do you know about the smiling dog? Unlike other creepypastas, its author is anonymous, and nobody knows anything about its origin. From one day to the next, people just started seeing the picture of that strange dog smiling, and those who claimed to see the terrifying animal in their dreams were never seen on the internet again. I am one of those people who had contact with Smile Dog, and I don't know what made me survive that day. Maybe it was luck, maybe my life was spared, or maybe what I saw that night was messing with me. Whatever happened, the mere memory of what I experienced that night was worse than death, and for the first few months after that day, I would have preferred not to be alive to remember it. It all started one Sunday night. At that time, I was studying psychology, and the next day I had a difficult neurobiology exam. I spent the whole day studying, and when night came, I took a break and started reading horror stories on the internet. Among them, I found an image that caught my attention. It was the Smile Dog. I opened the image and began to look at it carefully. It didn't look photoshopped, and if it was very well done. Something about this image made me feel very uncomfortable, but it was quite hypnotic. I got closer and closer to see it. It was as if I was hypnotized.
Charlie, how many times have I told you that leaving hot water in the pot is not washing it out? Oh my God, what is that?
You scared me, Mom. It's just a horror story from the internet.
You shouldn't watch that stuff at this hour. You won't be able to concentrate.
Don't worry, Mom. I was going to sleep anyway. I'll continue studying in the morning.
Make sure you wash the pot when you get up.
Yes, good night. And, Mom, please knock next time. With some hesitation, I closed the window where the dog picture was, turned off the monitor, and went to sleep. Once I woke up, I realized that I overslept, so I changed as quickly as I could and rushed to the university. The exam was long and arduous. I must admit that I wasn't quite prepared, but maybe I had done well, although I wouldn't know that until the following week. I left the university and walked home, but when I was a few blocks away, something caught my attention. Behind me, about a block back, a dog was following me. I could tell he was following me because he stopped at the same time I did. Normally, this wouldn't catch my attention, but with the creepypasta I saw yesterday, I was a bit freaked out. I started to walk faster and faster, but the dog was going at the same speed as me. There was something strange in the way he walked. His steps were too exaggerated, as if instead of being a dog, he was imitating one. I ran the last block and arrived home safely. As I turned the key and prepared to go inside, I looked in the direction of the dog one last time. The dog was still a block away, but it was no longer sitting there waiting for me. The dog was standing on two legs. As it did so, its eyes were frozen on me. Despite being so far away, its gaze pierced that entire block and chilled my blood. I slammed the door shut and quickly locked it, feeling that it gave me a little more reassurance. I spent the afternoon as if I was in a trance. I wandered around the internet, playing online games and pretending that nothing had happened. When night came, I went to sleep without eating. My mother and sister assumed I was tired from the exam, so they didn't say anything. After several hours of sleep, I woke up in total darkness. Since my window overlooks the courtyard, there's usually some light coming into my room, but this time it wasn't the case. There must have been a power outage down the block. As I was waking up, I saw a black silhouette approaching me in the dark. I couldn't see clearly, but I knew that silhouette. That was Max, my dog. I watched as he walked towards me, but I felt something was wrong. What was the dog doing here? He always sleeps in the yard. I heard a bark coming from the backyard, confirming that my dog was there. So who was in my room? I turned around to the other side of my bed, expecting the worst. Being so close, I could make out the silhouette perfectly. It was my dog. My dog really was in my room. As soon as I saw it, I reached out to pet it and it licked my hand. Confused by the barking I had heard earlier, I turned my head back to my patio window, and what I saw left me paralyzed with fear. My dog was standing, leaning against the window, scratching at it to get into my room as it always does. This didn't make any sense. 3 seconds ago, my dog was next to me, licking my hand. When I turned around, Smile Dog's dog was right next to me. It wasn't doing anything, just staring at me with a huge macabre grin that went from ear to ear. It might not have been doing anything to me, but its gaze, its two dark circular eyes gave me a horrible feeling of death. My heart was going faster and faster, and I was finding it harder and harder to breathe. The dog stood there, looking at me, trembling. I tried to move, to escape, to run, to do anything to get away from that situation, but nothing worked. I was totally paralyzed. Suddenly, I began to hear footsteps behind it. My room was darker than before. I couldn't see the silhouette of what was walking behind the dog, but they were human footsteps. When they were right behind the Smile Dog, the footsteps stopped. Out of the dark came a gray hand, which petted the dog. The hand was hairy and large, and the nails were long and black. Although it was too dark to see anything else from the hand, I could recognize huge glowing red eyes behind the dog. It was all a nightmare, but it felt so real. When I was trying to figure out what I had dreamed, I raised my hand and felt my heart skip a beat. My hand was soaked with dog saliva. The monitor turned on by itself, and on it was the picture of Smile Dog. Underneath it, the picture said, "Share the picture with all your friends, and God bless you." My only reaction was to cry and obey. I sent the photo to everyone I knew. Some responded confused, others thought it was a joke. The important thing is that it worked, because that was the last time I dreamed about the dog. I still can't find an explanation for what I experienced that night. The only thing I can tell you is that be careful with the things that you look for. In the beginning, we all thought it's a joke, but since this happened to me, it can happen to anyone, and I don't know if everyone will be as lucky as I was. I stood in the bedroom, gazing out of the window with a sense of dread. My wife, the one I had promised to love forever, was gone, and I couldn't say I was looking forward to her return, but I had to wait and watch, just to ensure that the conversation with my brother remained our little secret, safe from her ears.
But you need to get that before the end of the year. When are you gonna do it?
Black Friday.
Crushed by a sea of people? Dang.
No, people are unpredictable. It'll have to be merchandise.
That's a little harder.
Can you do it?
Maybe something in the workout section. We've got these new bench sets and super heavy with all the weights, and they keep them up high.
Okay, so can you do it?
I can rig something up.
Good. It's just around the corner before the holidays. It'll be the perfect excuse to get out of going to her family's house for Christmas.
Damn, that's dark. You're just gonna ghost them?
Not having to go to their house makes it worth it, even without the money.
That bad?
Do you really have to ask?
They seemed alright to me.
I've got better things to do than burn my life away listening to another BS fishing story from her dad or the latest gossip from her mom.
Yeah, Susan's family is the same.
Oh, and we're doubling down.
What?
2 words. Wrongful death.
Genius.
Never let a tragedy go to waste.
They'll probably offer a deal. They don't want the press of a trial. I hear stories about it all the time. Not my store, but others.
I'll gladly accept a reasonable offer. After all, I am a reasonable man.
Does that mean I get more too?
20% of the total take.
All to get out of Christmas.
Remind me not to invite you to New Year's.
Yeah, right. With all that cash, we'll be living like kings. What are you gonna tell her parents?
I'll tell them I'm away dealing with my grief or some crap like that.
Damn straight. Oh, and the tow truck is a go. I have a migrant driver. He's set to go as Plan B. You just have to give him a call the day of if we need him to back off.
He's chill?
Yeah, he just needs the cash. There's a tow he can steal from a family member. They work late, so they should be sleeping. He says he can make it look like a joyride. Plus, he's illegal and he's new here, so no prints in the system, and he won't be in a hurry to get involved with law enforcement.
Perfect.
Hey, I meant to ask, how are you gonna get there the day of? And how are you gonna get her there?
We'll drive together. I'll tell her we need a new TV or something.
You think she'll buy that?
I'll figure it out. You just worry about your part.
Just make sure you don't drive back with her if Plan A doesn't go right.
Sounds good. I'll talk to you soon. As she walked through the door, I couldn't help but envision the hefty payout I had carefully planned to receive from our life insurance policy. It was ironic to think that just last week she had chided me for my supposed lack of follow-through, and little did she know I was now fully committed to following through with the plan I had set in motion.
I'm home.
Hey, sweetie. Damn, you're looking fine. Did you get your hair done?
I look good?
Like $1 million bucks.
Oh, stop. And actually, there's something I wanted to talk to you about.
That doesn't sound fun.
Well, we aren't doing anything for Thanksgiving, which is okay. But my parents really would like it if we came by for Christmas. And before you say anything, I know it wasn't your favorite last year, but it would mean a lot to me if we go.
For you, I would do anything else. Anything else. Just choose it.
Come on, please.
All right. Yeah, sure. We can go. But you owe me.
Oh, really? Owe you what?
Forgiveness. I was trying to clean up the cords behind the television and I knocked it down. It's broken.
Are you serious?
I know things are tight, but I thought we might be able to find a sale or something to replace it.
Yeah, I mean, we can always go out on Black Friday and get one on a discount. It's only a week away.
Oh yeah, good idea. Why didn't I think of that?
Well, I guess you still need me for something.
Many somethings, my dear, and don't you ever think different. A week later, we found ourselves standing outside the door and I couldn't contain my anticipation. Our financial situation hasn't improved much over the past year and I was eager to finally secure the much-needed payout. I knew I had to keep my composure until everything was done. With any luck, the plan within the store would unfold smoothly and I could secure not only the life insurance payout, but also a wrongful death claim against the retail giant. It was all a bit of a mystery to me at that point, but I couldn't help but feel enthralled as I waited to see how everything would unfold.
I told you we should get here earlier. We might not be able to get the best deals. They might get bought up before we even get inside.
Paul's working today, and I had him hide one of the televisions that I like so we can get it without fighting the crowds in the electronic area.
So we'll just run in and get that, then get to the register as quick as possible. They should be opening the door any moment.
The doors opened and the crowd started pouring through, but I needed her to continue alone to the planned spot. I couldn't be seen near the accident, or else I could fall under suspicion. Hey, I really need to use the bathroom.
Right now?
Yeah, but it's in the sporting goods aisle, 34B on the top shelf, bay 19. Paul put one of those inventory poles there. Just use it to get the television down. I'll meet you at the register.
Jake, wait!
You'll be fine. After the crash and commotion, I leisurely made my way to the sporting goods aisle. When I couldn't pretend any longer that I didn't know who it was, I rushed to her side, holding her hand as she lay bleeding and unconscious. Paramedics and police arrived and she was declared dead on the scene. I put on a convincing show of shock and sadness, even managing a few teary-eyed moments. Then, I left the chaotic scene, heading back home, a mix of shock and elation swirling within me. Driving away from the store, I cranked up the music, singing along loudly. At a four-way stop, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Paul. I started to pull through the intersection, then glanced at my phone to read the message. They're interviewing me next, then we'll touch base. You made the call, right? I looked up just in time to see the headlights of the tow truck plowing into the side of my car.
When it comes to the graveyard shift, almost every employee tries to avoid it. But on the other hand, the night shift pays more than the day shift. When I joined the local coffee shop as a barista, I expected a lot of creepy strangers my way. Drunk dudes who try to hit on you, and crazy old ladies that scream at you for no reason soon became a daily dose of my entertainment. The coffee shop is generally operated by a drive-thru during the day. Apart from me, there worked another girl named Susie. Susie and I became good friends in very little time. She was always jolly and went the extra mile to serve the customers. I admired her level of patience in handling rude and creepy customers. But this one night, when Susie was stuck at home with the fever, I was assigned to pull the all-nighter. The owner offered me double pay, hence I couldn't resist. After quite a rush until midnight, the arrival of customers started to loosen up, having a little break. I went to the back of the shop to smoke in peace. When I returned, I saw this car waiting near the drive-thru window. A tall man was lunging from the passenger seat window and peeking inside the drive-thru. I quickly got in. apologizing in a polite tone.
Welcome to Super Coffee, sir. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Once he saw me, he went back to his seat. I stood near the window and asked,
What would you like to order, sir?
Where were you?
I went to take the trash out.
Huh.
Suddenly, he came real close to my face and started smelling in a very creepy way. He sniffed me like a dog and then let out a huge grin.
Why do you smell like cigarettes then?
By this point, I was going through so many emotions. His face was probably inches away from mine.
I'm sorry, sir. I just went to take a break.
That he could report me for smoking on duty and keeping him waiting seemed more important than his cringy behavior. I just stood silently with a sad face.
Don't worry, I won't report you.
He slowly went back into his car and gave his order. I smiled awkwardly but felt a little relieved that he at least understood my situation. While the coffee was getting done, the man continued chatting with me, and this is where things started to take a dark turn. He took out a small fishing hook from his pocket and began picking his teeth with it. As disgusting as the sight was, I tried to look away.
So what time do you get off, Angela?
He read my name tag tucked in my uniform with too much attention.
Late in the morning, sir.
Stop calling me sir. Do I look that old?
Honestly, he did. But I continued his rant to be safe and not push him to report me.
I didn't mean that, sir.
So what do you do after you go home? Do you shower?
Excuse me. What?
Come on. No need to be mad. It's just a basic question.
I don't think I need to answer that.
I poured his coffee and placed it right in the window.
Here's your coffee. That'll be $2.70.
Don't you think you should hand me that coffee yourself?
There, his voice changed. I got goosebumps. With shaking hands, I grabbed the cup and raised it toward him. He suddenly grabbed my hand and smashed the coffee cup. Hot boiling coffee splashed on my skin, and his too.
Ah! What are you doing?
Our hands were burning, but surprisingly, there weren't any signs of pain in his face. He stared through his cold, dead eyes and let the coffee burn our skin.
Leave me, you freak! Let me go!
He pulled me closer to him and said in a low but scary voice,
I don't like girls who think they're better than me.
That was the end of my tolerance level. I slapped him and kept punching him to let go of me. But slowly, he pulled me into his car right from the drive-thru window. I heard a car horn when my body was halfway out the window, and the man immediately left my hand. Without waiting for a second more, the man started the car engine and fled the scene. I broke down crying, holding my burnt hand. The next day, I returned to the drive-thru and reported it to the owner. I asked him to see the security footage when he said the CCTV camera needed fixing.
So that means there's no evidence of what he did to me?
I was mad and hurt, but the owner, instead of helping me, blamed me for leaving the shop to go for a smoke. He didn't care about the safety of his employee. I was so furious that I quit the job right away. Susie was standing there when I was leaving. She consoled me for what happened and told me to take care. I hugged her one last time and said to be careful while working the graveyard shift here. I kept in touch with her after that. She told me the owner had fixed the security camera 2 days after I left. I warned Susie about this man but never thought he would have the guts to return. 1 week after this incident, I got a call from Susie's boyfriend. He said Susie hadn't come home since last night. She was doing her night shift at the coffee shop and was supposed to return home after work, but never showed up. That's when an awful feeling hit me. Did something happen to her? Then one day, I saw it on the news. Susie's dead body had been found, and her killer was none other than the same man from that night. He kidnapped her and killed her in the garage of his home. The most horrifying thing was the ransom picture he sent to Susie's parents. He staged her body like a living person. What kind of sick psycho does that? The story you just saw is loosely based on the bone-chilling murder story of 18-year-old Samantha Koenig. She was working her night shift at the Common Grounds coffee stand in downtown Anchorage. As she was finishing her shift, the young barista was approached by a man later identified as a serial killer named Israel Keys. Keys hid his face under a ski mask. He threatened Samantha with a gun and took her to his property. He then tied her in a shed and used a radio to cover up her screams for help. Keys poured a glass of wine, drank it in front of Samantha, and then strangled her with a rope, leaving her body in the shed. Keys flew to New Orleans for a 2-week vacation with his family. After returning from his vacation, Keys decided to take Samantha's ransom photo to get money from Samantha's parents. While she had already died by this time, Keys ensured to show her alive in the photo. He sewed her eyelids open with fishing line, braided her hair, and applied makeup to her face. Keys then propped the body against the wall and took the picture. He called the photo proof of life, indicating that the victim wasn't harmed by him. Keys was arrested in 2012 by the FBI. In his chilling interview, he explained how he chose his victims.
My ex-wife was a school teacher for many years, but I honestly don't know why she ever chose that profession. We never had kids together, much to the disappointment of our families, although I am grateful for it. She often had problems with her students. Coming home from work and ranting about how much they aggravated her was almost a daily occurrence, and every couple of years, there would be an incident that forced her to transfer to another school in a different age group. She finally settled in teaching kindergarten. It was definitely not the right place for her. She had always talked about being a professor and teaching in college, but she never scored high enough on her exams to qualify. So I can imagine she felt a great deal of self-loathing for ending up in a classroom full of 5-year-olds. I know she was taking out her frustrations on her students. Within the first year of her teaching kindergarten, she received 2 separate complaints from parents that she had gone too far with disciplining their kids. I heard about the following conferences extensively, but even her side of the story didn't make her look good. One boy had apparently drooled on his desk, so she put duct tape over his mouth. The other case was a girl who accidentally bumped into my wife while she was holding a cup of tea, causing some of it to spill on her blouse. As punishment, my wife had the girl stand in front of the class as she poured the rest of the entire cup of tea over the poor girl's head while it was still hot. She always expected me to take her side in everything, and I wanted to be a good husband for her, so I used to support her no matter what the school said she was doing wrong. When it came to those kindergartners, though, I had to be honest with her. I told her she was taking it way too far, past the point of being strict and, well, to the point of abuse. Of course, this made her furious, and she could be a nasty woman. My mother and father didn't raise me to hit women, but hers must have raised her to hit men, because any time she was upset with me, she would strike me and frequently scratch me with her nails, something her students were also familiar with. Oftentimes, she would throw whatever she had in her hands at me, including pieces of fine porcelain that I got for her as a gift for our wedding anniversary. She threatened to cut me with a knife on several occasions as well. Every time something like that happened, I couldn't stop thinking to myself 2 things. First, how in the world did I end up getting stuck with this woman? And more importantly, how did she ever end up working with children in any capacity? Regrettably, sometimes in the heat of the moment when she was screaming in my face, I said some things like that to her, which only fanned the flames. In 2017, I threatened to leave her. It was only the first time I had threatened divorce, whereas she had done it 100 times. The next morning, things were weird. She was quieter than usual, and despite our fight the previous night, she served me tea and breakfast. I noticed the tea was a little extra bitter, and even though I was drinking it out of porcelain, it tasted like I was drinking it out of rusty metal. My wife noticed me making a face about it, and I knew if I complained that she would have a huge fit. So, like a good husband, I sucked it up and drank it, ate my breakfast, and then got up from the table to finish getting ready for work.
Barely a few minutes later, however, I started to not feel well. My stomach was suddenly in immense pain, and before I knew it, I was throwing everything up into the toilet. My wife knocked on the bathroom door, and for a second, I thought she was going to help me, but of course she did not. She just wanted me to know exactly what was happening to me.
Next time you think about leaving me, I'll increase the dose.
She dropped that bomb on me and then left for work, leaving me completely alone to go through that awful ordeal of processing the poison she gave me. Ever since then, I lived in fear of that awful woman. But despite my fear, I did everything I could to avoid her and find escapes from my life at home. I started lying about staying late at work so I could go out at night and have at least a few hours of my life away from her. Unfortunately, that only made things worse. For the next 2 years, as we became increasingly distant, what I did see of her slowly became more unhinged, and the complaints parents were bringing against her shed light on increasingly demented things she was doing to her young students. Eventually, the time finally came that she received her final notice from the school board. At the end of the year, she would be let go. This would be her last year of teaching. I tried to convince her that this was a good thing, that she could finally get a different job that she actually enjoyed. But in her mind, this was the end of it all. She knew she would never get another job, and she always said she would never be a housewife. A week after she got the notice, she called me at work, begging me to come visit her at school immediately. I protested that I was very busy and couldn't leave the office, but she played the divorce card and forced my hand. I left during my lunch break, hoping I could come back after dealing with my wife, but I was caught completely off guard by the reason she actually wanted to see me. When I arrived in her classroom, the students were in peril. The entire classroom was kneeled over, clutching their stomachs, vomiting uncontrollably everywhere, screaming and crying for someone to help them. It was pandemonium, and in the middle of it all was my wife, standing there and smiling at me like an evil maniac. What's going on? What did you do?
Doesn't it look familiar? I don't think I needed to, but I upped the dose for them anyway.
I immediately called for help, though I was in shock. Everything after that was a blur. The police came and arrested my wife as an army of paramedics rushed in to carry the kids away. I just couldn't believe that she would actually poison them like she poisoned me. After her trial and sentencing, however, there was no point in denying the truth. My wife is a psycho. Or I should really say my ex-wife was a psycho, because one of the children did not survive, which all but guaranteed that our justice system would not let her survive either. On March 27, 2019, a 40-year-old Chinese woman by the name of Wang Yun was arrested for poisoning her entire class of kindergarten students with contaminated porridge, one of whom died from multiple organ failure after battling their injuries for 10 months. The poison in question was silver nitrate, a highly corrosive and toxic carcinogen that in high concentrations can render the blood unable to carry oxygen throughout the body. During her trial, Wang Yun was described as a despicable and vicious person. Her husband also revealed that he believed she had poisoned him with the same substance just 2 years prior, although he was never hospitalized. Wang Yun was found guilty in 2020 by the local intermediate court and sentenced to death. Her picture was never released. In July of 2023, the Chinese authorities carried out her sentence.
Thanksgiving used to be awesome. Imagine a cozy house, the smell of turkeys and pies filling each room. It was awesome. But when I was 16, something went down during Thanksgiving that still freaks me out. High school sucked that year, and not because of the academics. After some messy drama, I found myself in the outs. Getting picked on became part of the daily routine, so you can bet I was counting the days down to Thanksgiving. I needed a break, and I was desperate for some of Grandma's home-cooked comfort food and a pause from the high school horror show. I was also hoping to catch up with my dad. He was always swamped, working late at his family law office. We barely talked, and I had stuff on my mind I needed to hash out with him. The homework and the bullying were just too much, and I needed my dad to help me figure things out. But that Thanksgiving, instead of the peace and quiet that I was hoping for, something happened that turned my safe haven into the setting of nightmares. We were at my grandma's house when all hell broke loose. Our family isn't huge or anything. It's just us. Me and my little sis, our parents, my aunt and uncle, a couple of cousins, and grandma. A nice small gathering. The guys, including me, were up to our usual pre-dinner mischief, sneaking bits of the turkey when we thought no one was looking. It was like this little tradition, a game almost. Mom hated it, always scolding us for ruining our appetites, but Grandma was a partner in crime, always slipping me an extra piece with a sly wink. We had just settled around the dining table, the room warm with the buzz of light conversation and the golden glow of the chandelier. Dad was in the middle of saying grace, a moment where time seemed to pause, where everything was perfect. That is, until a loud bang at the front door shattered the moment. Dad's prayer got cut off. He wrapped it up with a quick, "Amen." I guess he didn't want to leave God hanging. He and my uncle bolted to the living room window next to the front door to check out the commotion. A guy was outside, losing his mind, waving a baseball bat around like a madman.
"Come out, you coward! You think you can do this to me and get away with it? Where is she?"
I'd never seen Dad so pale. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Every one of us was holding our breath, waiting for what would happen next. Bang! Bang! The sharp, piercing noise of the bat against the front door echoed through the house again, each strike accompanied by the man's wild screams of frustration. Just when it felt like the door would give in, just when the terror reached its peak, the banging stopped. We watched him storm off to his car, the night swallowing him whole. Uncle Thru was the first to snap out of the shock. He dashed into the kitchen and came back armed with a large knife and Grandma's stone rolling pin, still speckled with bits of pie crust and flour. He was ready for a fight. But Dad, he just stood there, staring at the door, silent. It was like he was frozen, the color drained from his face. I'd never seen him like this, so helpless. The Dad I knew was a rock, but this guy outside, he turned Dad into a statue. The silence was a living thing, oppressive and thick, wrapping its icy fingers around each one of us. Every creak of the house, the distant sounds of the night, seemed amplified, echoing the terror that the man had instilled. Mom was on the phone with the police, her voice shaky with a mix of fear and rage. The details were scattered. I heard our address and the mention of a madman with a bat, but my ears were too filled with the pounding of my own heart to take in every word. The heavy silence was almost as unnerving as the chaos before. Every quiet second ticking by felt like the calm before another storm, and I wasn't wrong. He came back. In the dull light from the front porch, his shadow looked all kinds of creepy. This time, he had a raw turkey in a tinfoil tray. My skin crawled. There we were, inside, trying to hold on to some sense of normalcy. And outside, a symbol of our family gathering was about to go up in flames. As he doused the turkey in oil and lighter fluid right there on the lawn, every cherished memory of past Thanksgivings felt like it was being tainted. He struck a match, and as the flames leaped up, casting wild, unpredictable shadows against Grandma's house, it felt like our safe, sacred family space was anything but.
"You think you can burn my life to the ground and get away with it? You're going to burn!"
The man's voice, twisted with rage, resonated with a haunting echo that would linger long after. As the sound of the tires screeching away faded, Dad and Uncle Thru bolted outside, their faces a mix of shock and gutsiness, determined to put out the fire consuming the turkey. They smothered the flames with baking soda, killing the fire's dance. But the dark quiet of the night was a stark reminder. The peace we took for granted was broken, and the safe haven of Grandma's house was violated. The police arrived, and Dad recounted the night's horror, offering the haunting description of the man, his identity an unsettling revelation. The estranged husband of a woman whose divorce Dad was handling. The drive home was nothing like usual. Instead of the laughter and chatter, a heavy silence hung in the car. The whole vibe was just off. Our house didn't feel like the safe, cozy place it used to be. Every room was filled with the echo of that guy's rage and the sight of the flames. I tossed and turned in bed, those horrific images playing on a loop in my head. Sleep was a battle. And when it finally came, it wasn't restful. Then, a light. A creepy, intense glow slipped through my blinds, jerking me out of my messed up dreams into something way worse. Flames were crawling up the front door of our house, and that same damn car from earlier was there, pulling away into the darkness.
Fire!
I yelled at the top of my lungs, rushing to my parents' room. We scrambled to my sister's room, then out the back, around the side, into the front yard. Dad tried to use the garden hose, but it was no use. The water practically turned to steam before it even hit the flames. Mom dialed 911, her voice shaking. It wasn't long before the fire trucks rolled up, sirens blaring, drowning out the crackling flames. They worked to get the fire under control. The police picked up the guy my dad identified. Turns out he was to be locked behind bars, where his crazed rage couldn't touch us. But even with him locked up, the terror of that night clung to us. Even now, sleep is fleeting. Often I'll wake up to this eerie glow outside my window. Every time, it's his face I see, twisted in a sickening smile amidst the flames. That's when I really wake up, drenched in sweat. The terror just as real as that night. I can't shake it. But Thanksgiving is like a shadow, following me into every restless night, turning every dream into a front row seat to the nightmare that never seems to end. My Furby was the best friend I ever had. I got her for Christmas one year when I was in middle school. We didn't have a lot of money to spend on toys, but I begged and begged every day until they caved. I was ecstatic. It was really hard for me to make friends as a kid, and that's the whole reason I wanted a Furby. Mine was named Mimi. I desperately needed a friend, especially at school. All the other kids bullied me a lot, so I sat alone at lunch every day. Things changed once I had Mimi. I took her to school in my backpack so I could put her on the table during lunchtime and eat with her. Mama do, kabobe. Yay, kamate, dailo ote.
I'm sorry, Mimi. I know it's dark in there, but I would miss you all day if I left you at home.
Lots of kids took their new toys to school after we got back from Christmas break. I guess it was okay for all of them to show off their new toys, but not me. I might have finally found a friend, but all my old bullies were still around.
Hey, look, she's talking to a toy. What are you, crazy? You know this thing isn't real, right?
Shut up. Mimi's my friend. You wouldn't understand.
Your friend? Wow, you have a name for it and everything. You must really care about her, right?
Yes, I do.
Then you would hate if I did this.
Those mean boys took Mimi and started throwing her around to each other. They were laughing, but all I could hear was Mimi crying.
Buke taboku, karababoba, karababoba.
Stop it. You're gonna hurt her. Please stop.
Boo-hoo, my stupid toy is gonna get broken.
I said stop it.
I did what I had to do to protect my only friend. They thought I was a wimp, but that day I became dangerous. I jumped right on top of that stupid jerk and started clawing the skin right off his face.
Ah! Help me! Get her off of me!
If I hadn't been pulled off of him, I would have been able to rip his eyes out. He had deep cuts all over his face that probably left nasty scars. I hope they did, but unfortunately, I never got to find out. Even though my actions were justified, I got suspended from school for 10 days as they debated expelling me. But what upset me more was the fact that my mom took my Furby away from me. She said it was causing problems, that I couldn't just make friends with a robot and not talk to anybody else. But it's not my fault that Mimi treated me better than anyone else ever did. My mom hid Mimi on top of the big bookshelf in her room and said I could have her back when I started to behave. Of course, I wasn't going to wait that long to see her again. At night, I snuck into my mom's room and climbed up the bookshelf as quietly as possible. Then I grabbed Mimi and snuck back into my room.
I missed you so much, Mimi. I told you I'd get you back.
Kame me one.
Mimi, what's wrong? Why aren't you saying anything?
Betty, is that you?
Mimi, you can talk.
Of course I can talk. I love you, Betty. Why did they take you away from me?
I don't know. They hate me.
So it's true.
Nobody really loves you, do they?
No, they don't.
But I love you, Betty.
Do you really mean that?
I do, Betty, and I can prove it. Let's make sure nobody ever comes between us again.
That sounds wonderful. But how?
Listen carefully, Betty. Mimi told me the plan she hatched. The most important thing was to make sure I put Mimi back in the exact same spot every night so my mom wouldn't notice anything. At night, Mimi and I would talk and catch up and have our tea parties, except there was always one extra chore we had to do together. Mimi showed me what to get out from the cabinet underneath the sink and what stuff in the pantry I should put it in. We did this every night for a week. In the morning, I had to go without my Furby, but I spent the whole day fighting to get her back. She told me that I had to refuse to eat anything my parents gave me that was made in the house. No matter what they did, I had to demand that I would not eat until Mimi was returned to me. And if they still refused, I would only accept chicken nuggets from McDonald's. My parents caved in a few times and got me nuggets, but then they said it was getting too expensive and I had to come off my hunger strike or I would starve. I was in really bad condition. Going hungry is terrible, but my parents, who were eating food from the house, were much worse off. They looked sicker and sicker with each passing day, until they could barely stand up and say enough words to tell me what to do. Finally, one morning, as they were trying to shove cereal down my throat, they collapsed. Right away, I ran to Mimi.
Mimi, you were right. That box that said rat poison worked great. They're sleeping forever now. It's just you and me.
Hooray! Let's play!
At last, Mimi and I could be together without anyone trying to tear us apart. Mimi showed me some food that was safe to eat. And for the next 3 days, we lived our most perfect possible lives together. We had the whole house to ourselves while Mom and Dad rotted on the kitchen floor. Unfortunately, the neighbors came looking on the 3rd day and found us out. Sadly, once they threw me in juvie, I never saw Mimi again. I lived in foster care until my 18th birthday, which was a month ago. Now I have my own money, and I can buy my own Furby. I think I'll call this one Mimi 2. How much do you believe in luck? Before I went to that casino, I thought I was a lucky man. Things used to work out well for me. I used to win at gambling games. But that night, everything changed. That night, I stopped believing in luck. Because a stroke of luck quickly turned into the worst moment of my life. A night in which, for the first time, I felt helpless, leaving my life at the mercy of the little luck I had left, while I cried against the wall, begging for my life. It all started on the first day I went to the casino. My younger brother had been insisting me all month to go. Once we got inside, I was amazed at how big the casino was. It was full of lights, and there were people gambling in every corner. The first thing my brother wanted to do was go to the slot machines that he always went to. Dwight started playing and losing coins pretty quickly. With some curiosity, I sat down at the machine next to him. I was about to put in my first coin, when Dwight became alert.
Owen, don't sit there. That's Ace's machine.
Get out of here. Aces. And that would be me. Get out of here.
Next to me was a very tall and imposing man. His dirty white shirt revealed huge muscles. The man was quite old and even seemed to have vision problems, but he definitely didn't look like a person you'd want to piss off.
Ace, I'm sorry, dude. My brother doesn't know the casino. Come on, Owen, let's take turns gambling on mine. What? Hell no. Who do you think you are, the casino owner? I sat on the slot machine. Come later or find a new one.
I started playing on the machine, and I lost the first game. While I was doing it, someone touched my back. It was Ace.
Listen, kid. I always come here and I always sit in this place. It brings me luck. You see, I don't want to get kicked out of this casino, but if I have to, I'll break your head. Now would you please get out of my seat before I get angry?
I'm sorry, sir. Next time you want to ask for something, be more polite and I'll think about it. If you have to get angry, then do it. As soon as I said that, I played again in the slot machine. And to my surprise, I won. And I won a lot. I started to celebrate, but when I turned around, I didn't see the happy faces of my brother and some people celebrating for me. I mean, they were looking at me, but worried. I looked right behind me and there was Ace, absolutely furious. His face was glued to mine,
The man was absolutely furious. He looked ready to grab my face and rip my skin off with his hands. I had never seen someone so intimidating and angry. At that moment, I lost all my courage and bowed my head, as if by winning I had done something wrong. After a few seconds in which it seemed that the old man was going to beat me to death, he couldn't take it anymore and released all his anger.
Ah! 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 Ah!
Without even looking at me, he began to hit the slot machine with his fists. We all watched in shock as with each blow, the machine was being destroyed. As if he was invulnerable to pain, he punched it more and more until some security people grabbed him and took him away. As he was leaving, he turned and looked at me one more time. This look froze me cold. He didn't look at me with hatred. He looked at me with determination. After that, my brother and I decided we didn't want to play anymore, but we didn't want to cross ace either. So we stayed playing blackjack for a while, and shortly after, we decided to leave, almost without saying a word to each other. Neither of us was ready to talk about what had happened. Once we arrived at a passing hotel, we went up to our room and got ready to sleep, until a noise called our attention and forced us to look outside.
So there you are.
We couldn't believe it. It was the old man from the casino. He followed us to this hotel. After destroying our car, he started to climb the stairs to come to our room. We had nowhere to go, so we slowly walked into our room and locked the door. Dwight pulled out his phone and called the police from the bathroom, while I stood against the wall with a kitchen knife, watching Ace bang violently on the door with his bat.
You think a door can stop me? You couldn't stop me with all the doors in this hotel! A knife. Really? A knife? Go away or I'll use it! Get away from me or I'll use it! Kid, you had the guts to throw me out of my own machine, to steal my luck and win my money! You even got me kicked out of my favorite casino! And you have the nerve to show me a knife and hold it against me? Have you gone crazy? Do you even have the guts to do it? Come on, boy! You can't get it any easier! Just squeeze the knife and you'll kill me! Come on! Where's that man who confronted me in the casino, eh? Eh? You're just a brat. And you know what? I don't like brats. My chest!
I had no idea what was going on, but I knew this was the chance to escape. Confused by the old man's scream of pain, Dwight also exited the bathroom and ran for the door. I think he's having a heart attack. This is our chance to leave. We both ran out of the place, but halfway there, I stopped. No, we can't do this.
What are you talking about, dude? The psycho tried to kill us!
Without listening to Dwight, I turned around and went to the man. As soon as he saw me, he tried to attack me with the bat, but fell to the ground in pain. As much as he tried to kill us, this man needed help, and I was going to give it to him. I may have not been making the right decision, but the danger had passed, and I couldn't let a helpless old man die. As soon as the police that Dwight had called arrived, I told them that this man was having a heart attack, so we took him to the nearest hospital. I tried to visit him one of the next days, but when he woke up, he blamed me for everything, and told me that if he ever saw me again, he would really kill me. To be honest, I believed him. His threat felt pretty real. That was the first and last time I ever played on a slot machine. I never went to a casino after that. Hell, I never even set foot in that town again. I never heard from the man again. Maybe he was back in the casino. Maybe he's in jail or dead. I honestly don't care. This was just another casino. And that's why I'll be happy to stay out of one for the rest of my life.
It's been over 20 years now. 20 years of my living hell. Ever since that cursed photo appeared in my life. Everyone I meet thinks I've gone crazy over something ridiculous. That the smile.jpg file is nothing more than an internet hoax. How I envy those who are ignorant enough to believe that. This is my last chance to tell the full story. It started in the early 90s. I was working my first job in Chicago at an office that operated a digital bulletin board. The people in the office didn't treat me with any respect. I quickly became bitter and resentful of my coworkers. It was in that headspace that smile.jpg just found me. I was in my tiny cubicle in the darkest corner of the office. Working on the oldest computer owned by the company, I received a random message from an address typed out in characters that weren't even a real language. The subject line read, "Smile, God loves you." I absent-mindedly opened the email. All it contained was a single attachment, smile.jpg. I downloaded it, and my life changed forever. That horrible, unnatural smiling dog and the wretched red hand beside it. As soon as I saw it, I knew something was wrong. This wasn't supposed to be seen by people. And yet, I spent the remaining 2 hours of my workday locked in a trance, unable to do anything but stare at it. When I went to sleep that night, I had the first of thousands of nightmares. The dog sat on top of me, repeatedly speaking "spread the word," as I was unable to move or say anything. Then, I saw the red hand appear next to me and reach for my face. Right as it grabbed me, I shot awake, hyperventilating in a cold sweat. This nightmare happened every night for the next week. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I knew what it wanted me to do. I found the email from the garbled address and forwarded it to everyone in the office, including the people that worked for other companies in the same building. The whole rest of the day was lost to everyone becoming deeply unsettled by the image. Some even had panic attacks. My boss asked me why I did it, but I claimed it was a system error, that as soon as I clicked on it, it just forwarded itself to everyone like a computer virus. He reluctantly believed me. Luckily, after that, the nightmare stopped for a while. For everyone else, however, they had only just begun. Productivity grinded to a halt. Everyone was sleep-deprived, anxious and depressed, complaining of nightmares and visual disturbances related to the smile.jpg file. One by one, they all quit, until eventually the company went under. I lost my job and gained a heavy sense of guilt, which sent me into a deep depression. Unfortunately, it wasn't long after that my nightmares returned. I kept seeing the same thing, but instead of the smiling dog sitting on me, I was watching it invade the sleep of my old co-workers. The dog glared at them with that awful smile as the devil's hand covered their mouths so they couldn't scream. The dog always turned to look at me, as if to say thank you. Then it turned back to its victim, reaching down and taking a bite out of their throat. And then every night for the next week, I was stuck watching the dog slowly devour one of my old co-workers while the devil held them down. Once the poor soul was completely consumed, the next night would start the whole process over again with another co-worker. I had been used by the demon to spread its curse to hundreds of people, foolishly believing it would spare me. I have no idea how many people I damned, but the number is in the high hundreds. Finally, one day in 2008, it seemed to stop. I had watched my last old colleague get eaten alive in my nightmares. For the first time in many years, I slept without disturbance. Of course, I lived with an unspeakable amount of guilt, but I was free of the curse, or so I thought. I was only allowed a few months of rest before it came back with a vengeance. Not only did it return to my nightmares, each night inching closer to my throat, but for the first time, I saw the dog while I was awake. Initially, I saw glimpses of it while I was walking out in the street. It stalked me out of the corner of my eye, always smiling, always inching closer, until eventually it found its way into my apartment. One day, I got inside and closed the door, and when I turned around, it was sitting right in front of me, once again commanding me to spread the word, over and over again. I was trapped there for hours, hearing those words a million times, until it finally let me loose from the trance. Even then, I tried to ignore it, but the harder I resisted, the more it terrorized me. When I stood in front of the mirror, I could see the devil's hand resting on my shoulder, and the longer I disobeyed, the tighter its grip became, until one day, my collarbone broke out of nowhere right before my eyes. After getting the bone set, I obeyed in a moment of cowardice. I concocted a fake story about a man whose curiosity about the now infamous Smile Dog photo led him to do an investigation about its origins and posted it to the internet. As I typed this story out on my computer, my hands transformed to look as red and twisted as the devil's hands itself. Ever since then, that's the only way I can see them. I knew the file was already out there, so I had to find a way to increase the interest surrounding it, so that more people would inadvertently curse themselves out of their own curiosity. It was far more successful than I thought it would be. The demon left me alone in my waking life, but my nightmares were once again stricken with the horror of watching the souls I was responsible for damning being taken by the dog. Except this time, it was different. Every night, I saw different people of all ages and backgrounds sitting in front of a computer screen with a red glow. Then, without warning, the devil's hand reached through the screen and grabbed the person, then ripped their skeleton from their flesh and pulled it through. Then, the dog stepped through the screen, turned to smile at me for a moment, then happily devoured the boneless meal I provided. Every night I went to sleep, I must have watched this happen to 1,000 people. The dog's prevalence waxed and waned for the next 10+ years, until recently. It seems that people have stopped to care about it as much. That, or everyone who heard about it has already been taken. The demon has returned to me. I now see the dog following me wherever I go, incessantly murmuring, "Spread the word," non-stop. The devil's hand has an unwavering grip around my throat. They are forcing me to create a new surge of interest around the smile.jpg file so they can go on another evil rampage. And I find myself doing their bidding without even thinking about it, as if my own force of will has completely withered away. However, I cannot keep doing this. I know that I can never escape this curse as long as I'm alive. So this is my final message and admission of guilt to the world.
I worked at Home Depot for almost 10 years. It was a good job, as I didn't mind lifting heavy things. Sometimes a jerky old man wouldn't take my advice on anything because I was a woman, but honestly, that was the hardest part of the job that I usually had to deal with. However, just a few months ago, something happened that changed my life and my career. The day started out totally normal. It wasn't too slow or too busy. And for the first few hours of my shift, everything went smoothly, until a rather large group of young men came in together all at once. They were all wearing hats and clothes covering their entire bodies, despite it being in the middle of June, and their eyes were darting around. I was roaming around the store helping customers find what they needed, but I was near the front when they walked in. I watched them grab 2 bulk push carts and split into 2 groups, one heading for the appliance section and the other for the aisle where we carry spools of wire. Both of these are some of the bulkiest items we carry, but also the most valuable. A single large spool of wire can weigh as much as a full-size refrigerator. It seemed obvious to me that these young men were not the type to go out furnishing a house and laying electrical wires, so I immediately found them suspicious. I quietly made the call over the radio that I was investigating a group of suspected shoplifters, but there was no response. Management is supposed to acknowledge this, but my manager of several years had just been replaced by a new manager who wasn't as good at keeping up with things. I suspected this would be the case and made my way over to the first group of men anyway. They had rolled the push carts up to the large cable spools and were working together to take them off the shelf and stack them on the cart. Each one weighs hundreds of pounds, and some of them can sell for multiple thousands of dollars. The men looked like they were struggling with the weight, indicating to me that they were not used to carrying these things and had no business loading up on 4 of them. I approached them and started asking questions, but the men wanted nothing to do with me. "Excuse me, can I help you with anything?"
No, we know what we're doing. Go bother someone else.
"What kind of electrical work are you planning with that?"
It's none of your business. Don't get in our way or you might get hurt.
"I'm sure there's something I can do to assist you."
Just go away!
When the man raised his voice at me, I took a step back and called for backup on the radio, except, "Security, be advised of a disturbance in aisle..." Out of nowhere, he ran up and smacked the radio right out of my hand, then smashed it to pieces under his heel. I was shocked. That had never happened to me in all my years of working there. I knew then that these people were not messing around by any means. Before he could throw any more threats at me, I hurried back to the front of the store and tried to get into the manager's office, but the door was locked and the blinds were drawn. I banged on the door until the manager finally peeked through the blinds and waved at me to go away. I didn't want to yell and alert the entire store that we were being robbed and cause a panic, so I went over to my nearest coworker and asked to borrow their radio. I called specifically for management and security for assistance in stopping what was going on, but yet again, there was no response. That's when my coworker told me there were no loss prevention officers on duty that day, and the manager had silenced his radio to conduct an interview. At this point, I knew there wasn't going to be any help for me, but I still didn't want to just let those people walk away with tens of thousands of dollars worth of goods, because it would be my job on the line if anybody were found at fault. I opted to call the police from my own phone, but I was only halfway through telling the operator what was happening when I saw both groups of men pushing their carts full of kitchen appliances and cable spools toward the exit. I stood in front of the door to block them without help from anyone else. "Stop! The police are already on their way!" Despite what I said, they steamrolled right past me, and the first guy who smashed my radio even pushed me to the ground and kicked me in the stomach. Then he loomed over me and said something just loud enough for me to understand.
Stay down unless you want to come with us. There's a market for you too.
I zipped my lips, stayed on the ground, and watched them all leave without any other obstacle. Once they were out of the store, I started to cry silently as my coworker from earlier came to help me up and make sure I was okay. The store entered a bit of a frenzy as the customers pieced together what had happened. Finally, several minutes later, my manager finally came out of the office, and just to add insult to injury, once he learned that the store had been robbed, he found a way to blame it on me. I was in disbelief. I quit on the spot, walked out the door, and never came back. I wouldn't want to go back to working at Home Depot anyway. I have since learned that this issue with gang robberies has recently become a huge problem for stores all across the country. I wish I could have been warned about this instead of being on the front lines. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put myself in so much danger. Since I lost my job, I've been living with my mom again until I can find a new one. After this trauma, however, I don't think I can work in retail anymore. The story you just heard is not just true, but more common in recent months than you might think. As of June 2023, large-scale robberies of Home Depot stores have become an issue all across the United States. Multiple individuals, sometimes entire gangs, simply storm in, grab the most expensive things they can carry, then walk out. Anyone who stands in their way is knocked over, threatened, or beaten. The perpetrators have become increasingly violent and heavily armed. Home Depot has responded by locking up their most commonly stolen goods, but many employees worry that this will only be a minor barrier to prevent robberies. Black market sales of high-value goods stolen from Home Depot go to fund numerous criminal underworld operations, and unfortunately, employees like the one you just heard from are at the forefront of the danger, while Home Depot corporate complains of massive monetary losses.
I can still remember the first day I ever went to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. The name sounded dumb to me, but boy, did I have a change of heart once I stepped foot inside. The air smelled like pizza, and the only sound I ever heard was playtime. That, and of course the music on the show stage. The second I laid eyes on Freddy and his friends, I was in love. I don't know what it was about them, but I found them to be so magical. My friends and parents disagreed. They called the animatronics creepy and scary, but I couldn't see what they were seeing. Maybe my friends weren't so good, and maybe my parents didn't pay enough attention to me. But in my mind and in my heart, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and all their friends were my real family. There were quote-unquote more lifelike characters like Yellow Bonnie with employees inside helping to act out the show and speak some lines, but I always found the purely robotic friends to be more interesting. Unfortunately, my parents weren't exactly the richest people, so I didn't get to go nearly as much as I wanted. When I did get to go, I was the happiest kid on the planet. I liked the games and the pizza, But the real draw for me was always the magic on the stage. Understandably, I was dying to know more about how it all worked, but I had no idea how I'd be able to satisfy my curiosity until one day I saw him. It was after one of the last shows of the day had ended. Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica were still standing on stage, but their suit friends had left. I was finishing my soda, about to go to the bathroom, when I saw a man in a staff t-shirt sitting alone at a table in the very back, eating a slice of pizza. I knew he wasn't the only worker, but something about him said he knew a lot about the animatronics. Even from across the room, I could tell he was sweaty, greasy, and scrawny, which made me think he was some kind of nerd. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, but instead I went to talk to him. "Excuse me, mister. Do you work here?" "I do." "What do you do?" "I play Yellow Bonnie. I'm just taking a break before the last show." "Really? Does that mean you know how Freddy and his friends work?" When I asked that question, the man grinned ear to ear, revealing strangely yellow teeth. "Of course I do. What would you like to know, little one?" With that, he had me hooked. I asked him all the questions I had been saving up, and he told me the answer to every one. Soon, however, it was time to go. I just had to get one more question in. "Mister, how do you know so much about how they work?" That's when the man leaned in and whispered to me a bombshell of a secret. "You want to know something, kid? I'm the owner of this place. And by the way, you can call me Will." "No way!" "It's true, and I'll prove it to you after the show. I gotta go get back into the suit for now, but come back around here later and look for Yellow Bonnie." It was too enticing to resist. My parents wanted to go, but I convinced them to stay for the last show. Afterwards, I knew we would leave very quickly, but my mom always went to the bathroom first and left my dad to watch me. Once she was gone, I waited for him to get distracted, and then I slipped out of sight. Who knows how long it took him to notice I was gone. I quickly made my way to the same place from earlier and stood there for a painfully long minute, until finally, I saw Yellow Bonnie walk around the corner at the far end of the hallway. She twitched and waved me over to her. I followed without even thinking. Right as I got to her, she started walking somewhere else, somewhere I never went. They didn't answer when I asked where we were going. Eventually, we got to a door that said employees only. Yellow Bonnie opened the door and let me inside. As she turned on the light, my breath was taken away. Foxy was standing right in front of me. He wasn't on, though. Pirate Cove was closed for repair that day, and I was worried I wouldn't get to see Foxy at all. But suddenly, a miracle happened. "Thank you so much for letting me see Foxy, Mr. Will." "That's not all. I've been working on some issues with Foxy's circuits. Come closer and I'll open them up, so you can get a better look at what makes the magic happen." A miracle turned into a dream come true. Mr. Will was able to take Foxy's chest and face off while wearing the Yellow Bonnie suit, and then all the magical inner workings were revealed. Yet, all of a sudden, I had a sick, sinking feeling. The inner workings weren't magical. They were grotesque, like a mechanical jaw full of 1,000 steel teeth. When I took a step back in fear, Will reached out and grabbed my hand. I managed to slip away and run for the door, but before I could open it, both of my shoulders got clamped in the vice grip of Yellow Bonnie's hands. I had no hope of escaping her grasp then. I kicked and screamed, but no one came to help me, and I was powerless. Against my struggle, he stuffed me inside of Foxy, between all those horrible steel teeth, and then he closed me in by putting the pieces back on. I was trapped. Will looked me in the eyes with Yellow Bonnie's face. "Welcome to the family, Foxy. Try not to break down this time." He flipped a switch, and in an instant, I was toast. The pain was immense and all over my body, but it didn't last long. However, even after my heart stopped beating, I never left Foxy. I somehow was forced to become him. And now I spend every day stuck in Pirate Cove, watching other kids live normal, happy lives, totally unaware that I'm there and trying to desperately tell anyone about what happened to me. Although, Will has started to let us wander at night, and I hear there's a new security guard working the night shift. I have worked as a maintenance staff all my life. I have stayed awake in graveyards, roamed dark halls of storage units, and spent nights in abandoned asylums. But still, that one night at that school made me crap my pants. One of my former bosses recommended me to this all-girls boarding school on the hillside. Surrounded by deep woods and tall hills, the building was a world in itself. I watched the place every night after the end of school hours. The teachers and the students stayed in the hostel behind the school building. I unlocked the school very early in the morning, even before sunrise, and ran a quick check before the commencements of the classes. Then carried on with my cleaning work as the progressed. So it was a Monday after the weekends. The girls have just arrived at their classes. Once again, the place was under rules and regulations. I went to unlock the washroom on the 3rd floor. That was the biggest one in the school. It had 12 stalls lined up on one side with tiles of mirrors on the other. I entered and opened the stalls one by one. By the 4th or 5th stall, a reeking smell hit my nose. It was like rotten meat, and that too in its worst form. One by one, I kept opening the stalls and pushed the door. By the 10th stall, I was sure something had died in this washroom. The reeking smell was getting difficult to stand now. I covered my face with my hand and opened and pushed the 11th door. You say you locked the school and there was no one. Then how come Gretchen got locked up? I don't know. Don't you think she would say something hearing I was locking the door? Trust me, officer, she was not inside that stall when I locked it 1 month ago. All right. Well, let's see where this investigation takes us. Do not leave the premise till then. The cops left with Gretchen's body, and I sat on a bench in the ground floor corridor. Gretchen was a student here in 9th Standard. I remember her because she came into the middle of the term, but who knew she would be found dead in the school bathroom right after summer vacation? The cops came for a week straight, but they couldn't solve the case of Gretchen's mysterious death. Since that day, weird things started happening in the school. One day on a rainy afternoon, I have just started checking the classes to lock up the property. Students have already left for their hostels. I walked up to the 3rd floor and suddenly felt a rush of cold wind at the back of my neck. It was as if the temperature of that floor had just dropped to minus. My eyes went to the big wooden door at the end of the hallway. I felt goosebumps for the first time, realizing I was alone in this vast building. I took slow footsteps to the washroom and pushed the main door. After Gretchen's death, students stopped using this washroom. I even heard some of them feeling weird in here. I got in and started locking the doors. I opened each stall, checking if they were empty, and closed it. By the time I was on the 11th, my heartbeat was racing. I raised my hand, but it remained in the air, shaking. I couldn't reach for the doorknob because an unknown fear had wrapped inside my mind. I don't know why I kept thinking that if I opened the door, I would see dead Gretchen sitting on the toilet seat, smiling at me. To hell with it. I turned around without locking it. I was heading for the exit door when I heard loud knocks behind me. I stopped. I slowly turned my head. It was pin-drop silence. Hello? No one answered. It stayed quiet for a few seconds, and then again. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. This is all not true. My crazy mind is playing tricks on me. I wasn't ready for this. Someone was crying inside the washroom. There was a pain in her voice. Maybe it was really another student. Gathering the leftover courage I had, I asked, "So do you need help? I can call the teachers if you want." But she kept on crying. I started walking now. The more I walked closer, the sobbing grew louder. Once I stopped outside the 11th door, the crying stopped. I knocked on the door. "Hey, is everything all right? Please come out." I twisted the doorknob, holding my breath, but but the stall was completely empty. The entire washroom started echoing with laughter. Whoever was laughing didn't feel like a human being. I saw the main door slowly closing in the wind and started running. The laughter was getting louder. I covered my ears with my hands and ran for my life. As I exited the washroom, its door slammed loudly behind me. It was like an invisible force shut the door in my face. Whoever has inside left me with a warning to never step foot in there again. When I reached the stairs, I looked again at the hall, and I saw something that will forever be imprinted in my memory. There was a face peeking at me from the half-open washroom door. The fading sunlight made it visible enough to chill my bones. The face looked like Gretchen, only it wasn't Gretchen at all. Its skin was rotten in places. The eyes were wide and never blinked. Her long hair dangled with the wind. She was staring at me from the end of the corridor.
I detest arcades now. I have ever since I became aware of what dangers lie within. It was this night years ago when I was alone in my local arcade. I was drunk. I had just returned from my intoxicating birthday celebrations and was using up the money my friends had given to me on meaningless games, earning some tickets as I did so. Pac-Man was my favorite of the games they had there, and it reminded me of my childhood as the yellow monster devoured the fleeing colors roaming the maze. My dad used to take me here every Friday, and we'd always go way over our spend limit. It was those memories I was trying to reclaim. It was those memories that have forever been cursed. During my little excursion around the arcade, I remember hearing the faint sound of shuffling, coming from what looked like the arcade's slot machine. Obviously, it made no sense to me at the time, and my focus was immediately drawn to the giant lever sticking out of it, alongside the flashes of colors and all the different symbols lighting up the screen. I stumbled over, took out my last coin, and slotted it into the machine. There was the mechanical orchestra of the coin traveling inside the machine, followed shortly by the machine directing me to pull the lever. While smiling cheerily, I grabbed it and fell with it to the floor, triggering the slot machine to spin its magical symbols of potential wealth. Staggering to get myself up, I held on tightly to the machine, using the lever to pull myself back to my feet, astonished to find I had just won a triple match. I jumped around for a bit, waiting for the tickets to come pouring out of the machine. But as the final few spewed out, I went to reach for them, only for my grin to vanish, being replaced with a darkened realization, poisoning my smile with a look of pure terror. My hand had met with another. Suddenly, the other hand grabbed mine, and before I had time to even comprehend what was happening, it pulled me in, smashing my head into the machine's wall. I was knocked down momentarily, feeling dazed as I laid there, staring as the machine opened up and a crooked old man stepped out. He was dressed in an old employee uniform, and his wrinkled mouth widened into a grin full of black and moldy teeth. We stared at one another for a brief moment, prey and predator, as I lay there, paralyzed by the utter surprise of the sudden emergence of this creature of a man. But after the moment ended, the man's smile vanished, and instead, he gave me a look that seems like that of hunger. Instantly, he launched himself towards me, grabbing me by the arms, attempting to pin me down as I hurled my legs at him, struggling to free myself. I could feel his revolting breath blowing down upon me. I retched, thinking I would vomit from it all. But by the fortune of some greater presence, I managed to land one of my heels into his knee, and feeling the contact, I dug in, pressing hard into my foot as I felt the tip of the heel break through his skin. In an instant, he reeled back, gripping his knee in agony as blood spurted out from it in great big gushes of red. Taking the opportunity, I hastily picked myself up, and feeling the alcohol had been replaced by adrenaline, and seeing him noticing my escape, I grabbed my heels, pulled them off, and flung them at the man, with one embedding itself into his side. He began screaming, but I was already halfway out of the building. But as I slammed into the exit door, twisting the bar to free myself from his clutches, I turned around, only to see him standing there, staring at me with a look I simply cannot remove from my mind. His face had twisted into one of a beast's. His eyes had darkened, and his mouth was open partly. His breath seemed shallow and raspy, and he was entirely ignoring the blood still spilling from him, having removed the heel, gripping it tightly in his gnarled hands. I was frozen. He then lifted it to his nose and breathed it in. Suddenly, a delirious grin spread across his face, and he opened his mouth, staring me down, and began to laugh. I was beyond disgusted, and only just managed to turn away, leaving this doomed place forever. I called the police the moment I got home. My feet were bleeding from having to run barefoot on the concrete pavement, and I didn't hear back for weeks. But on the Wednesday, 3 weeks after the attack, a police report was finally published, highlighting what they had made of the attack at the arcade. The moment I saw it, I fell back off my chair and sprinted to the toilet, filling it with my vomit, fueled with the dreadful images they had left in the report. I stayed hunched over the toilet for several minutes, the images refusing to exit my mind, painting it with a repeated display of the horrors I almost fell victim to just weeks ago. Soon enough, however, I regained my stature and stumbled back towards my computer. I needed to read what had happened to my attacker. Police report, December 3rd, 2004. After thorough investigation of the incident, we have yet to identify the man responsible for breaking into the arcade slot machine and for assaulting a 20-year-old woman. However, we were able to discover a trail of blood leading out from the slot machine and have found it to continue outside the back exit, leading onto the alley behind the building complex. The blood has been sent for tests, and we will soon have the culprit in custody. My eyes watered, and my heartbeat grew rapid. He was still out there, prowling the streets, which left my eyes to return to the images once again. In image 1, it showed the inside of the slot machine was filled with pictures of not just me, but several other young women. Some were even children. On the floor of the inside, there were a mesh of empty food wrappers, old toilet rolls, and the most disgusting thing of them all was used tissue to go along with it. 3 years on, and the man's name was eventually revealed. But as for him, he was never found. But I won't grant him the decency of saying his name. Only people have names. Those who choose to separate themselves from humanity, they are no more than beasts. That thing of a man is a nightmare, nothing more. If only my therapist was right, I knew deep down that another sleepless night awaited me. It awaited me. It was Missy's idea to spend the first few hours of Black Friday in front of a computer screen. The weather, as often during that time of the year, was awful. Perhaps an omen I should have picked up on from the start. Most shops won't open till 9 anyway. Isn't it best to get a head start? That's what she said on Thanksgiving evening, half drunk, but still quite alert. Tia agreed. She desperately needed to find a wedding dress for elopement in just 2 months. As for me, why not? I still remember those words coming from my mouth, though now they sound alien somehow. Had I known, what would have changed? We sat down around Missy's old computer. Apparently, she didn't want to use her good laptop for some reason. As the ancient machine whirred to life, I couldn't help but notice that Missy was acting a bit oddly. She kept on looking between us and her phone, tapping something into her device every couple of seconds. You good? Your dinosaurs come back to life. Tia nudged her on the shoulder, evoking a quiet yelp. Missy's always been a bit jumpy, but I couldn't help but wonder just why she was being so weird. Yeah, I was just looking up the link to the website I want to start with. It's a bit obscure, so you can't just search it up easily. Isn't that, illegal? I asked. Perhaps illegal wasn't the best word, but it sounded perhaps a touch too good to be true. Nah, it's used by millions every year, or so their page says, at least. We loaded up the sketchy-looking website only a few minutes later. It looked broken, with half the text being just links copy-pasted all over the site. Click here for sales, some of them said. The others were a bit more disturbing. Looking for the perfect woman? Click here to see her live. Lost your beloved? We can get her back for you. What the heck is this thing? Tia tilted her head to the side as she said that, lips pursed. She was clearly unimpressed, and so was I. Are you sure it's safe? Missy hummed, typing BF sale into the search bar on the very top. It is. I use it all the time to nab sales. Come on, don't be such a wimp. I wasn't sure how to feel about the whole thing either. I couldn't help but remember those old internet safety videos my parents made me watch again and again growing up. Don't give out your personal information just to anyone, I murmured to myself, but shook my head when the others looked at me. Memories I tried to suppress clawed at my mind, begging me to leave the room. Still, I had no choice but to stay. I desperately needed new clothes for work. My boss had been scolding me again and again for not wearing the right stuff, and well, he was threatening to fire me. I was broke, though, way too broke to afford the fancy garb he wanted his waitresses to wear. When I left my unkind ex a year ago, I was barely able to escape him. I had nothing but the clothes on my back. I shook my head, trying not to get too caught up in the thoughts as we all wrote in our email addresses, names, and more. Make sure to type your middle name right and allow tracking, Missy said at some point. I didn't take you for having so much attention to detail, Missy, I joked. You wouldn't have been fired from your last job if you had it back then. Missy scowled, but said nothing. Seconds later, as she hit the enter button, our profiles appeared on the website on the right. But there is something off. Why are we here as items? I asked, reading the labels again and again to make sure. Missy's name was also missing, which was weird since I saw her type it in before. Might be a translation error or something. I bet this was made by foreigners or whatever, Miss muttered, biting down on her lip. She was anxious about something. Huh? I was taken aback when the ancient web camera Missy had attached to her screen made a loud noise. Only then did I notice that the light to its right was blinking red. It was recording. Is this supposed to happen?
Yes.
The answer didn't come from Missy, but from her speakers. My blood froze in my veins. Someone's watching us. I said those words out loud, though perhaps I should have stayed quiet. But I knew that voice. Huh? Oh, no, that was just some silly audio clip I clicked on. Here, look, I found the store you guys wanted to hit up. See? 90% off. Go choose whatever you want. Missy bounced back from looking nervous, her lips stretching into a smile. It was odd, I realized. She was wearing fancy makeup I'd never seen on her. Even her shirt was brand new, which was strange. Right before Black Friday, really. What the? It must be a blackout. I'll go and see if I can fix it. That was the last time I saw Missy. I wanted to ask her to stay, to not leave us alone in her room in the dark, but my voice was frozen in my throat. At that point, I didn't even understand just why I was so scared, but I was shaking. And then I realized it. This whole setup was nothing but a game that he and his friends made up to mess with me. But why did Missy sell me out? We need to get out of here. I stood up, grabbing Tia's hand. She looked perplexed as well, her head tilted to the side. What? We need to leave Now! I dragged her down the stairs, my heart pounding in my throat so loudly I was worried whoever was lurking in the shadows could hear it. I knew it, though. The second we sat down in front of Missy's old computer, we'd lost. Winning meant freedom. Losing, well, it stood for nothing short of misery. And yet I knew that I was just amusing them even more.
Stop. Don't even think about moving any further, Cecilia. By the way, Missy, darling, thank you for your help. I left you some extra cash on the sofa. Treat yourself to something nice.
The same voice as before, though less distorted, came from right behind my ear. I knew it. It was him. Missy had sold my location out to my ex, but why? I didn't have time to think, not when large hands grabbed my neck, rough on my soft skin.
Stay quiet, and everything will be fine.
I obeyed, but I knew he was lying. Nothing would be fine again. Not when I had him in my life. My name is Riley, and I used to run a small YouTube channel where most of my time was spent unboxing and reviewing stuff. Mostly I ordered from Amazon and Max for tech stuff. I started doing this during lockdown. Maybe it was because I was stuck at home so much, or maybe it was just an escape from my parents. Once I started earning from YouTube, I took more interest in my channel. I've always wanted to be a narrator, or just be an actor, really. Something about craving the spotlight. It's hard for me socially, though. I have always been awkward and quiet. My best friend Cindy told me about how people were making quick cash doing reaction videos. So I began looking for simple, cheap stuff that I could buy off of Amazon easily. Once you get a few bucks, you can get better equipment, Cindy said. Growing subscribers was harder than I expected. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my channel. Sometimes I would just talk, but that barely got any views. Then one day, I decided to do an unboxing of a simple little mystery box I ordered, and the views skyrocketed. Went from maybe 13 likes to 1,900 in a day. It was mind-blowing to me to think that anyone was really wasting their day watching me unbox a simple little box with a few showpieces inside. But they were. They loved it. And they wanted more of it. Comments like, "This is cool, you should do more unboxing videos." I would pay good money to see something crazy happen from these mystery boxes. I knew I had to think fast and jump on this trend before it became common, but I wanted to do something shocking. And that's when Cindy told me about shopping mystery boxes on dark web. I had heard different strange rumors about the dark web before, but had always been too scared to check it out. But still, I sat down one night and logged into the Tor browser. I found one box that was sealed with yellow tape, the ones we see cops use at crime scenes. The description of the box read, "Must unbox on a live stream." All right, I'm gonna buy this one. But the purchases needed some cryptocurrency. That's when I decided to ask Cindy to pay me some from her OnlyFans account. Fine, but only because it's your first time. It arrived the next morning on my porch, a large rectangular black box with only my address on it, no return receipt. It was heavy. I somehow carried it to my room. I dropped a quick YouTube short on my channel. "Hi guys, after your repeated requests, I have ordered this mystery box straight from the dark web. I'm gonna open the mystery box live tonight at 10 p.m. Stay tuned, guys." Around 8:30, I sat in front of the camera and started recording myself live. First, I showed the box itself on camera. Then, I cut into the box and eagerly reached my hand inside to take out the first item. It felt cold. I tensed up and pulled it out. My stomach dropped. It was someone's index finger. It was cut clean with not a single drop of blood on it. So pale that I could see the veins under the skin. "Ah, holy!" I screamed and flung it into the box. My live stream chat got set on fire. Wait, was that real? I want to see more. What else is inside the box? Next, was a small pencil box, as you might get from school supplies. Inside was a bundle of hair and chopped nails with a note. It looked like there were coordinates on the side. Not exactly sure what this is supposed to be, but it looks like whoever I ordered from decided this was going to a horror show, I said with a nervous laugh as I opened the box wider. At the bottom of the box, there was a sliced off head, but to my relief, it was just a mannequin. However, it did resemble Cindy a little too closely. I immediately cut the live stream and dialed her number. Hi, this is Cindy, and you're now in my voicemail. Feel free to drop your query and I'll get back to you when I can. Bye. Cindy, where are you? Are you all right? Please call me as soon as you can, okay? Half an hour went by, and Cindy didn't call back. She always calls back. Not being able to take the tension, I rushed to her house. Upon entering, I found her front door lock broken. Someone had forcefully entered. Cindy? Cindy, where are you? I switched on the lights and found the house ransacked. The furniture was turned over. There were slash marks on the couch, making the cotton spring out from inside. It was a mess. I checked the entire house, but there was no sign of Cindy. I was coming down the stairs when I stepped on something. It made a squishy sound, with a bone breaking. I looked under my foot and saw an index finger of a woman. It had red nail paint and a rainbow ring that I gifted Cindy on her 18th birthday. The story you just saw is inspired from true events regarding the unboxing of mystery boxes by YouTubers on their channels. Around a decade ago, just as technology was taking off, a genre known as unboxing became wildly popular on the top video streaming platform, YouTube. For the past couple of months, hundreds of YouTubers have been uploading videos titled Unboxing My Dark Web Mystery Box, and viewers are tuning in by the millions to watch. YouTubers have filmed themselves pulling everything from bloodied screwdrivers to tattered children's backpacks to voodoo dolls from the untraceable boxes. Anything bought on the dark web is done with cryptocurrency, the only untraceable way to pay for things. Sometimes the mystery box sellers can have profiles and reviews, but the entire process is completely anonymous. On the dark web, the boxes retail anywhere between $100 to $1,000, with some YouTubers even throwing in an extra bit of cash to try and sweeten the deal and heighten the creepiness. In some videos, YouTubers tell their audience they regret getting the box sent to their home address. Most of the time, the YouTubers end their videos disappointed and disgusted with what's inside. One person was even sent a completely empty box. The untraceable nature of the whole thing means YouTubers are putting more than just their faith and a few $100s in dark web sellers.
I went to my grandparents' house for Thanksgiving last year. It was a long-standing family tradition, but last year was different. My grandmother passed away just a month prior, and her favorite holiday was Thanksgiving. She was an excellent cook who collected hundreds of her own recipes, each of which she wrote down and passed on to her children. My mom, aunts, and uncles wanted to host Thanksgiving in Grandma's honor by following all her recipes. I was passing the time on my phone near the kitchen when I heard the first weird thing happen and poked my head in. My mom was trying to preheat the oven for the turkey, but the dial was acting up. Every time she tried to set it to 350, it would slowly turn back down to 325. She did this 10 times, and no matter where she set the dial, it found its way back to 325. That's when she checked the recipe again and realized she had made a mistake reading it. She thought the right temperature was 350, but Grandma specifically wrote down 325. My relatives chalked it up to the ghost of old Grandma watching over them and making sure they got all her recipes right. Later on, my aunt grabbed some oregano, but right before she started sprinkling it into the crock pot, the lid just popped off and all of it spilled onto the floor. A quick check of the recipe revealed that she was supposed to use thyme and not oregano. Grandma saved Thanksgiving once again. At one point, my uncle was trying to peel potatoes with a knife for the mashed potatoes. Grandma didn't have a peeler. She did it the old-fashioned way, and my uncle just couldn't get it. The knife kept slipping right off, but it was razor sharp. Sensing a moment to show off, my stepfather told my mom's brother to step aside and let a real man take care of it. Within 10 seconds, my stepfather sliced his right finger open. It didn't take a genius to conclude that Grandma wanted the potato skins included in her mashed potatoes, and her ghost was making sure it happened. As for myself, I didn't believe any of it. I thought it was a nice game they were all playing to imagine their mother was still around while her passing was fresh. Eventually, however, I got bored and walked away to hang out with my stepsister for a bit before the food was ready. She was the only good thing that came out of my mom and dad getting divorced. I never had siblings before until a few years ago when my mom remarried. I didn't care for my stepdad, but my mom was happy that both their children were getting along like family. I was just glad that I finally had a good friend like her. During the feast, the disturbances kept happening. The lights flickered, a chair moved without anyone touching it, somebody claimed to feel a presence, but by that point it was clear that these were made up by my relatives to keep the bit going. After a while, it felt like the ghost of Grandma gag had run its course, and soon after, the feast was over. Then, the only thing to do was hang out with the family, but honestly, I couldn't wait for everyone to go to bed. When night finally fell, I was stuffed into a small guest bedroom with all my male cousins. I waited a couple of hours, then snuck out and met my stepsister in the laundry room of the basement. Once we locked the door, we could finally be together for the first time in what felt like ages. I know it was wrong. We both knew it was wrong, but it just felt so right to hold her hand and to hug her and never let go. I've been waiting to do that again for so long.
Me too.
Do you think anybody heard you sneak out?
No. What about you?
Nope.
Good.
Yeah, that's good. We leaned in for a kiss. But then, we were less than an inch from each other when out of nowhere the washer and dryer turned on. We both freaked out, but that was only the beginning. The spinning in the machines quickly turned violent, causing them to shake around like crazy. Seconds later, the dryer burst into flames right before our eyes. I tried to look for a fire extinguisher or something to put out the fire, but I couldn't find anything. When I looked back, the inferno was already shooting up to the ceiling and scorching it. By then, it became obvious that it was time to go. We ran to the door and unlocked it, but when I tried to open it, I couldn't. It was stuck somehow. My stepsister couldn't get it open either. It was like another invisible lock had been thrown on the other side. Our last resort was to bang on the door and call for help, screaming and begging for someone to wake up and save us. But the fire was growing fast. Before long, the room was filling up with black smoke, suffocating us. We collapsed to the ground to escape it and kept screaming and banging on the door. The heat was immense. The smoke just got thicker and thicker until I passed out. The last sensation I felt was my body burning. I woke up in a stretcher with an oxygen mask on my face, being wheeled away from the house, which was now engulfed in flames. My stepfather was walking next to me. He was burned, but not as bad as I was. He told me he was the one who found us in the basement and pulled us out moments before it was too late. Then, he told me my grandfather didn't make it out in time, although that didn't seem to be the reason he looked so mad at me. Listen to me. I know you didn't start that fire, but I also know it's not a mystery why you two were down there. The whole family knows now. I hope you're ready for that. You should know better than to sin in your grandmother's house when you know she's watching. Once I got out of the hospital, nothing was the same with my family.
I discounted the smile dog when I first heard about it. I considered it another urban legend. But that was before I met Alex, before I realized the true horror hidden behind those smiling, malevolent eyes, and before I understood how a simple image on a computer screen could cause such terror. On a calm Friday night, everything started. When my friend Alex called, I was at home looking up information online. He begged me to come over right away, sounding frantic and trembling in his voice. I snatched up my jacket out of concern and headed over to his house. When I got there, I discovered Alex huddled in a corner of his dimly lit living room, his laptop open in front of him. He was visibly shaken. Sweat beads glistened on his forehead. Without saying a word, he turned the screen to face me after motioning for me to sit next to him. I fixed my attention on the picture filling the screen. It was a straightforward illustration of a Siberian husky dog sporting an unnaturally wide and menacing grin. Its eyes were a fiery red, almost like they were on fire, and its teeth were sharp, too sharp for any dog. I shivered uncontrollably. Trying to conceal my unease, I asked, "What is this?" Alex said in a trembling voice, "It's the smile dog, man. I noticed it. I saw the damn thing, and now I can't stop thinking about it." With skepticism, I arched an eyebrow. "Alex, it's just a scary picture, man. How's it gonna hurt you?" While shaking his head, Alex kept his gaze fixed on the monitor. "You don't get it. Just like you're doing right now." I looked at it, but it persisted even after I closed the tab. In my dreams, it stuck with me. I leaned in closer, attempting to understand why he was afraid. "What happened in your dreams?" With his voice trembling, Alex inhaled deeply. "In my dream, that dog and I are both confined to a pitch-black space. It's standing there with me, grinning, and its eyes are piercing. It repeatedly urges me to spread the word. I can still hear it whispering in the back of my mind every time I wake up." Even though I was beginning to feel uneasy, I had to control my fear. "So what are you asking me to do?" Alex gave me a desperate look as he turned to face me. "I need your help, man. It needs to be removed. Please. I need to spread the word, issue a warning, and get people to stop." Torn between doubt and concern for my friend, I paused. But I couldn't desert Alex in his hour of need, because the fear in his eyes was real. I reluctantly said, "Okay, man, we'll share the picture. But after that, you need to see a doctor." In order to alert people to the evil force behind the smile dog image, we posted it on various social media sites. There were a variety of reactions, some of which discounted it as a hoax and others shared their own anxieties and experiences. But the unease that had descended upon us was undeniable. We got a message from an unknown person on social media as the night wore on. A blank profile picture and random letters and numbers made up the username. "You've been warned," was all that was written in the message. Alex and I looked at each other anxiously, but we refused to be intimidated by a user who chose to remain anonymous. We persisted in our efforts to inform others in the hopes that by doing so, we would be able to reverse the curse. Days turned into weeks, and the smile dog started to encroach on our lives in ways we never could have anticipated. Its voice echoed ominously in our dreams as we heard its whispers in the darkness of our bedrooms. Every day brought us closer to insanity and greater desperation. I was using the laptop to browse the internet by myself one evening when I got a message. Alex had requested a video call. In anticipation of seeing his anxious face on the screen, I agreed to it. But what I had witnessed chilled my blood. There was Alex, but he had lifeless eyes and a contorted face. "Spread the word," he said with a hollow tone in his voice. The call ended abruptly before I had a chance to react and speak to him. I panicked as soon as I realized that something had control over my friend. I frantically called the police and tried to explain the situation as best I could without mentioning the smile dog. When they got to Alex's house, they discovered him frozen, with a manic smile and a catatonic state. The authorities were at a loss as to what had happened to him, and I was unable to bring myself to tell them the truth. The smile dog had a negative impact on Alex, and it was only a matter of time before it came for me. I can hear it in the shadows, pleading with me to spread the word as I sit by myself in my darkened room. I'm unable to evade its menacing gaze, and I worry that before long, I'll be like Alex, a pawn in the hands of an evil force. I'm telling you this story right now to ask for assistance, not as a warning. If you ever encounter the smile dog, avoid looking into its eyes, using its image, and dreaming about it. Once it has its teeth into your soul, it's impossible to escape.
It's been a bit since I've had this much fun. I couldn't help but say that out loud, sipping on my picture-perfect drink. It was as pink as the stilettos I chose for the night. the matching color giving me childlike glee as I glanced around the vast casino. I was standing on my own, holding my glass up to clink it with someone who wasn't there, but I still felt alive somehow. I was never really the one to gamble. It really wasn't my style. But my girls, bless their hearts, wanted to take me out to something new for my bachelorette party. It sounded good on paper, I guess, the possibility of winning a whole lot of cash and seeing some hot single guys. But I ended up somewhat alone in one of the corners of the large room, a bit startled. I just didn't know which game to start to play. Most of them looked rather uninteresting, to be honest. Behemoth machines whirring quietly as money spilt onto their trays. They were a lot like the ones I'd seen on TV. There were several poker tables to the right, too. I caught Cindy playing with the widest grin on her lips. Her poker face didn't seem to be spot on. Or perhaps she was bluffing? I guess I'll never know. There was something to the far left, though, that caught my eye. A single screen with some messy cables winding around it and a simple black box on a desk. It looked more like an old computer than anything, but I was somehow intrigued. Perhaps it was mostly because, despite the buzzing crowd, the far left corner was empty. I mean, I might as well check it out, right? You really shouldn't. A familiar voice broke me out of my thoughts. Elisa was playing pool with a man twice her age. I made a mental note to roll my eyes at her the next day. Couldn't she find someone a bit hotter and richer? He had his arms wrapped around her shoulders as he taught her the rules. I knew for a fact that she was a pretty good player, like better than him. I shook my head again. Perhaps the alcohol was getting to me as my friend's words rang like a bad omen in my mind. You really are going crazy, Ellie, I muttered to myself. Still, it didn't take long until I finally reached the intriguing machine. To be honest, it didn't quite look on par with all the others, but the screen in the middle of the table still said on. Neon letters glimmered against a dark background, a clear sign that it did function. I even heard quiet music, a bit different from the hodgepodge of pop tracks that played from the speakers. It was soft, inviting. What is that, some sort of opera song? I took another sip of my drink, my legs a bit heavy. Without a second thought, I shook off my shoes, letting my feet touch the bright red patterned carpet. It was slightly sticky. I didn't have it in me to shudder at the sensation. However, my hands reached for the large green button next to the screen. Right before I reached it, I heard, for the first time,
"Wanna play?"
It was a dark, mechanical voice, quite inhuman. I blinked, shaking my head. Why did it sound like I heard it straight in my ear when I was still a few feet from the speakers? I must be tipsier than I thought. I pushed the button, and finally, a smile stretched across my lips when a familiar tune started to play. It was just an old arcade game I recognized from when I was much younger. That's it for being mysterious. It was a horror game, which was weird. I had no place in a casino, though it looked like some sort of bootleg version of the actual game, one based a whole lot more on luck. Maybe that's why they bought it?
Do you wish to free the soul trapped inside these walls?
I couldn't help but snicker. How did something like this end up in a bustling casino? You couldn't even really win anything but points with it. Yeah, sure, whatever, I muttered, pressing the green button again.
Are you sure?
The letters flashed against the screen, blood red. I shuddered. I didn't know why, but I felt a cool drift of air wrap itself around my form. Yes, I thought, looking around the room one more time. I mean, what else was I supposed to do? Gamble? Sure, that was why I was here, but... Yeah, I want to save the soul, whatever, I muttered after a couple seconds, pretending that I was talking to the machine. I'm not sure why, but when the words turned...
It's your choice.
Without me touching the green button once more, I took a step back. Hold on, is this thing listening to me? No answer came, but something just still wasn't right. I felt as if I was being watched. The back of my neck felt tingly as I whipped around to see just who was eyeing me, but there was no one. Literally. The casino was empty. The music was still playing loudly, but something clearly wasn't right. Girls, this isn't funny. Fear gripped my heart when no answer came. Everything was the same as just minutes ago, save for the lack of people. Gravelly laughter followed my frantic search for my friends. I was about to turn the entire room upside down, hoping that it was a prank, but then I saw him. A man, roughly my age, dark eyes, pale skin, strange mole next to his nose. He stood next to the weird arcade game I tried to play, shaky on his feet.
No.
His voice was quiet, each no softer than the ones before.
You need to get out of here! Just run!
Time stopped. I wanted desperately to ask him why, to plead with him to bring everyone back, but my words froze in my throat. My body felt heavier with every second that passed. For a little while, everything went black. Gradually, I could hear things. My friends frantically searching for me, calling out my name. Ellie? Ellie, where are you? A man, the man from before, apologizing again and again, though never saying why.
I'm so sorry. So sorry.
By the time my vision came back, guys, I'm here. What's going on? No one would reply to me. I used to adore my job. The kids made me feel so loved and needed, and in return, I loved and adored them too. And yet, I was unable to protect them. It was a Monday I will never forget. It started out like every other morning. Most of the kids were happy to be back, to be able to play with their friends. I was delighted too. I loved everything about my job. As I went about my morning, setting up the tables for breakfast, I felt it. Someone was watching me. Miss Emmy, are you okay? Oh, yes, of course, Katie. Of course, it was just one of the class's usual latecomers, little Katie, whose mom worked just across the street. Somehow, the two of them were always the last ones to arrive. Perhaps I should have told Katie to go back home that day. Her tardiness would have made a good excuse. I hugged the scrawny little girl tight to my chest. She was a bit behind the others, smaller than kids her age, but with a mind as bright as the sun. Even our janitor, Thomas, who wasn't fond of the children, doted on her. I was almost certain he liked her a bit too much, but seeing the old man smile instead of grumble as he carried out his work was a win. It was an hour or so later. I was quite excited about showing the kids the new toys we'd gotten in the backyard, so I wanted to take them out a little earlier. Still, something felt off. All right, everyone, pair up, please. You know the drill. Quiet, gentle feet. In the hall we must stay. I ended my chant early when my eyes fell on an empty space where there should have been a child. No matter what I did, I was only counting 10 little smiling faces. I felt frozen for a second, my heart beating in my throat. Where was Katie? I remembered that she'd gone to the bathroom just 5 minutes ago, but I'd seen her slip back out to mess with Play-Doh right after. So how come she wasn't with the others? Katie? Katie, where are you? How could I lose one of the children? Fear crept up my spine, chilling my core. She had to be in the room somewhere still, right? Katie, this really isn't the time to be playing hide and seek. You know that too, right? The children, of course, grew concerned within seconds too. I pushed the emergency button on my phone. I needed help. This has happened before and everything was fine, but my gut was telling me that wouldn't be the case this time. Before I knew it, I felt a little hand tugging at my skirt.
Miss Emily, I saw Mr. Smith talk to Katie a while ago. Maybe she's with him.
Little Toby Taylor was a quiet child. He was observant, though, so I could trust his words. Still, Thomas wasn't allowed to take the children away from the classroom. Heck, none of the staff were. Not without my explicit permission. Safety was important, yet somehow Miss Emily, hi! Katie! Katie was there, standing at the door right by the main door. She was fiddling with her stuffy, her eyes on the ground. Oh, poor thing must have thought she was in trouble. Well, normally she would have been, but Thomas behind her with an odd look on his face. His eyes had always been a bit strange, filled with an emotion I could never quite grasp. Thomas, I understand that you dote on some of the children. It's lovely, really, but taking one of them away without any permission, however, is strictly forbidden. Perhaps I was just not used to dealing with adults as much as I was with children. After all, I spent most of my time with my class and the rest, well, planning for my job. I didn't have time to hang out with my friends or family as much as earlier. Still, I felt like that wasn't an excuse to feel like a deer caught in the headlights, and yet, there I was.
I saw this little lamb wander off, brought her back.
He said only that and nothing else, lightly pushing Katie towards me. When she let out a yelp, I finally saw it. Thomas wasn't empty-handed.
You lot are gonna do what I tell you.
His voice was low, but I knew he wasn't joking. Children, we're gonna play a game of Simon Says, okay? But instead of Simon, it's...
Thomas Says, right?
I knew that some of them noticed what was going on. One of the little girls whose mom worked with the police, Nellie, was inching closer to the wall, her eyes panicked. Others, however, were too far away or perhaps too innocent to understand it.
Yes, Thomas says, whatever.
The man whom I viewed only as a cranky old guy before was suddenly a terrifying beast. He shoved Katie towards me, sneering. Katie whimpered, clinging to me with her short little arms. Thomas locked the door behind himself as he sat down.
Thomas says, do not say a peep.
His voice was almost playful when he chanted, but I knew better. I placed a finger in front of my lips to encourage the children. I felt as if everything was in slow motion.
But why?
The question came from Lucas, one of the few in class who struggled to follow directions. His eyes were confused, and his poor little face was already tear-stained.
I said, do not say a thing.
Thomas's holler sent a shudder down my spine. Just what did he want, even? I took a step closer to him, ready to throw my body in front of Lucas if I needed to.
You!
Me? He was addressing me with a twisted look, his eyes leering. I swallowed hard. What did he want me to do?
Thomas says leave the room.
What?
I won't repeat myself. Leave the room or you won't be able to leave ever again.
I did. I had no choice. I dragged to my feet. They felt like lead. I'd never felt so scared in my life before, and yet I was also so powerless. I wished I dared to stay, but I didn't.
Lucas!
I wanted desperately to run back inside, the children's screams tearing my heart apart, but I never had the chance. I will never regret any more than leaving them alone. I thought I was doing the right thing, and yet I was just saving my own skin. All I can do now is remember and pray that this never happens again.
Our family's Thanksgiving celebrations have always been warm and friendly occasions. The aroma of a perfectly roasted turkey permeated the room as we huddled around the table, telling jokes and laughing. However, this year was different, adding a sinister twist to our beloved tradition that still gives me chills. Like any other holiday, we had made the usual preparations. My mom spent hours carefully seasoning and basting the turkey. My dad made his renowned mashed potatoes, and my sister and I carefully set the table. Even my brother John joined in, albeit with an uncharacteristically eerie enthusiasm. My family and I smiled and gave each other appreciative looks as we gathered around the lovely table. John, the family oddball, was well known for his eccentricities, but today he seemed especially off, his eyes darting about the room, and a sinister smile played across his lips, as though he was hiding something too delicious to keep hidden. I attempted to relieve the tension by asking, "John, what's so funny?" I shivered in response to his laugh. "Oh, well, you'll find out soon enough," he said. I scowled as my sister, parents, and I exchanged worried looks. Beyond John's peculiar behavior, there was something wrong. I couldn't help but think that he might be pulling another one of his notorious practical jokes. The aroma of the golden brown skin and savory spices filled the room as my mom started to carve the turkey.
My stomach grumbled in anticipation of the moment we had all been waiting for. But as soon as the first bite entered my mouth, I noticed a strange metallic taste. I cast a quick glance around the table and noticed that my family members shared the same expressions of discomfort. My father's voice quivered in worry as he asked, "John, did you do something to the turkey?" John laughed again, startling all of us. "Oh, don't worry, I just added a small surprise. You're gonna adore it." With a mixture of fear and disgust on her face, my sister pushed her plate aside.
What did you put in it, John?
My heart sank as I noticed his eyes glistening with madness, as his laughter turned into manic giggles. With a sly grin on his face, he admitted, "Ratsbane." A stunned silence engulfed the space. John had just acknowledged sprinkling our prized Thanksgiving turkey with ratsbane, a lethal poison. I panicked as soon as I realized how serious the circumstance was. Help was urgently needed. John lunged across the table, snatching my mother's phone out of her hand as she attempted to dial 911. His eyes, once so familiar, were now crazed and insane. With words laced with madness, he hissed, "Nobody's leaving until you finish your meal." My heart tightened with fear as I became aware of the severity of my brother's psychosis. He had always been odd, but this was much darker. My family's lives were in danger because we were entrapped. I lunged at John in an effort to wrestle the poison away from him as desperation overcame me. My father and sister also entered the battle, but John's strength seemed out of the ordinary. He fought back with such a ferocity that it terrified us to our core. He screamed, his voice a chilling blend of rage and madness. "Finish your meal!" However, there was no chance that we would voluntarily eat the poisoned turkey. We fought John with all our might until we gained the upper hand and took the tainted meat away from his grasp. During the ensuing chaos, I called 911 and explained the situation in a shaken voice. The ambulance rushed up, its siren piercing the tension, and our Thanksgiving nightmare began. Paramedics took us to the hospital where we underwent gastric lavage to purge the poison from our systems. Despite being a terrifying and grueling experience, it ultimately saved our lives. As we lay in our hospital beds, weak but alive, we pondered what had driven John to commit such a heinous act. Was it his deteriorating mental state, an evil desire for power, or something even more evil hidden beneath the surface? There was no doubt in our minds now that our Thanksgiving had turned into a nightmare. The taste of that poisoned turkey haunted our dreams, reminding us of my brother's brief encounter with the dark side. We ultimately made it through Thanksgiving, but not without significant emotional scars. It was a lesson learned the hard way that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we least expect. The bond we once had with John was forever shattered, replaced by fear and a haunting question. What other horrors lay hidden behind the facade of our loved ones?
The Home Depot parking lot was painted with murky orange hues and ominous shadows as I arrived to meet Sarah and Mark, two of my friends. I experienced a terrible sense of impending doom. I didn't realize that what had seemed like a routine trip to the Home Depot would develop into a nightmare that would follow me for the rest of my life.
Hey, Alex.
Sarah grinned as I approached them close to the door. Mark looked closely at a nearby stack of lumber. "We're gonna need a few items for the renovation project. How prepared do you feel?" I nodded in spite of the queasy feeling in my stomach. "I'm alright. Let's wrap this up." Our footsteps echoed through the wide aisles of hardware, building supplies, and tools as we entered the store. Long, menacing shadows appeared to stretch and twist like spectral fingers as the overhead lights dimmed. It seemed like the store was concealing some evil information because of the strange atmosphere. Sarah and I followed Mark as he made his way through the labyrinth of shelves and loaded a cart with various supplies. We watched with uneasy fascination as the intimidating array of power tools darted back and forth between the tall shelves topped with paint cans. "You can feel that, right?" I asked in a trembling voice. Sarah quickly glanced in my direction as her terrified eyes widened.
Alex, how do you feel?
With a faint hint of annoyance, Mark turned to face us. Relax, Alex. It's just a hardware store. Nothing more. However, it wasn't just a figment of my imagination. The Home Depot's walls seemed to be trying to suffocate us. I felt a spooky presence lurking in the aisles. We moved on, trying to focus on our shopping rather than the nagging fear that was consuming us. We occasionally heard low mutterings, though. It seemed to carry a terrible resonance. Sarah tightened her hold on my arm and said,
Did you hear that?
in a low voice. I had a hard time hearing the threatening voices with my ears. Even though I knew deep down it was unusual, I still said, it's probably just the wind or something. We came around the corner and saw a worker wearing a recognizable orange apron and wearing a name tag that read Greg. His demeanor was incredibly unsettling. He was carefully arranging boxes of nails on shelves. He seemed agitated, with bloodshot eyes. I'm sorry, Mark said. We need some paint and brushes. Greg's movements were robotic and jerky as he abruptly turned to face us. He complained in a deep rumbling growl about paint and brushes.
I ask that you heed my advice.
His walk was erratic and odd as he led us further into the shop. Sarah and Mark exchanged worried looks with each other, and I could tell they were experiencing the same uneasiness I was. The whispers became more ominous and louder as we followed Greg through the dimly lit aisles. It seemed as though the Home Depot's walls were helping to keep us there. They seemed to be driven by evil intent. I muttered in a voice of fear. I don't like this, guys. I think we need to leave right now. Greg abruptly came to a stop in front of a door with the sign Employees Only. Before we could immediately leave, he turned to us while displaying no sign of humanity in his eyes. His tone was sarcastic as he said,
Your supplies are here.
Mark cautiously opened the door, revealing a room filled with paint cans, brushes, and other building materials. But as we walked in, the door slammed shut behind us, and the lights started to flicker menacingly. We started to panic when we realized we were being surrounded. Our frantic attempts to open the door met resistance. The whispers that had followed us earlier surrounded us, growing louder and more ominous as the tension in the air increased. Sarah banged on the door and yelled.
Let us out!
However, nothing happened. All that could be heard were the steadfast whispers that seemed to penetrate all the way to the very core of our beings. As we huddled close to each other in the unsettling darkness, time stood still. Every second that went by felt like the evil energy in the room was eating away at our fear. The lights went out and we found ourselves in a black void. We could hear deliberate, slow approaching footsteps through the complete darkness. Mark exclaimed in a quaking voice,
Who's there?
You're never leaving.
The gurgling reply from the inhuman voice said. Reverberating laughter, unsettling whispers, and the shuffling of unidentified entities filled the space in a cacophony. We gathered together, trembling in terror as the darkness got closer to us. I wasn't sure how much time had passed, but eventually the door squeaked open and the lights came back on. We exited the now empty Home Depot, disjointed and shaken. Nothing appeared to have happened. Greg and the ominous figure that had plagued us were completely gone, and the shelves were neatly stocked. We left the Home Depot, swearing never to go back there. However, we would be plagued by the memory of that evening for the rest of our lives. A terrible reminder that sometimes, even the most common places could serve as the stage for unspeakable horror.
All right, children, take your paper and drawing equipment. Today, you'll be drawing your favorite animals. If you finish your drawing, raise your hand and present it in front of the class, okay? Chris, you know that the theme is to draw your favorite animals, right?
I'm not interested in drawing some stupid animals, Miss Carroll. They're boring.
But you know everyone will present their drawing in front of the class, right?
I don't want to go.
Are you sure, Chris? Don't you want to show your favorite animal in front of the class?
No, I don't want to.
All right, Chris, if that's what you want, but I hope you watch your classmates' presentation, okay?
I share these words with you because
Chris, it's time for a break. Don't you want to go play with your friends?
No, that's okay, Miss Carroll. I just don't really have any friends.
Well, maybe if you stop drawing for a moment, you could find a friend that shares the same hobby as you.
Are you gonna make me stop drawing, Miss Carroll, like my parents did?
Oh, no, Chris, I mean, you can continue your drawing later after playing with your friends. I wonder what's wrong with that kid. What's wrong, Carol? Oh, no, it's just that new kid, Chris. He's been drawing these strange symbols for the class today. Okay, that is creepy. He doesn't even want to play with his classmates. You know what's creepier? I heard from some of the children's parents that his family is into black magic at home. Oh, that's horrible. I understand he's a strange kid, but they don't have to say that about his family. Do you think his parents abuse him? I don't know. I never saw a scar or any other bruises on him. Look, it's just a rumor, all right? I don't want my student to be treated differently because he's different from others, okay? I understand that as a teacher. Unfortunately, kids around his age did not think the same as we did, Carol. What's going on here?
Nothing. I'm just playing with them like you said, Miss Carol.
Yes, Chris, but that doesn't mean to make them cry.
I'm sorry, Miss Carol, but I just wanted to show them my pets.
Pets? Chris, we don't allow students to bring their pets in school. You know that.
Oh, no, Miss Carol. I didn't bring them from home. I just found them in the school today.
Wait, what do you mean you found them today? Hey, get back here. No, Ellie, stop. It's just a worm. He doesn't mean any harm. Are you okay, Carol? Yeah, I'm fine. Could you take care of those kids first? Yeah, sure. Well, I'll be. I know, right? Yesterday he just made those 2 girls cry, but now he gained more followers in a day. You think he'll be a famous influencer in the future? By the way, I heard you're teaching in the Caterpillar room today. Yeah, the headmaster said that Collins is calling in sick and can't make it. That's funny. It looks like some of the other teachers have also been calling in sick this week. I know, right? It looks as if we have another pandemic strike. Oh, please, no more pandemic. I have just had enough of one pandemic in my life. You know, with some of the teachers calling in sick, I thought the headmaster would close the school. Yeah, when it comes to the children, he usually puts their safety first. But he told me he would not neglect their studies just because some of the teachers were sick. Well, we better take care of ourselves as well. Anyway, look out for the kids while I'm teaching in the next room, okay? All right, see you later. That's strange. Where is everyone?
Good morning, Miss Carol.
Chris? Thank God. I thought nobody came to school today. What are you doing out here all alone?
I was looking for you, Miss Carol. We were all waiting for you in the classroom, but you didn't come. So I thought you were teaching in other classes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, but when I went to the classroom, I couldn't find you or the other children. Where are they now?
Don't worry, Miss Carol. Everyone is coming to the school. In fact, we're all waiting for you.
Huh? What do you mean?
Yes, join us, Miss Carol. Let's play together.
Shh, be quiet. They don't know we're here. Ellie, thank God you're okay. What happened to them? Where is everyone? They've been locked up by the children in the basement. I can't save them alone, so I hid here. Oh God, let's call the police. No, we have to save them first. It's that new kid, Chris. He's the one who's caused all of this. What? But how? I'm not sure, but I guess it has a connection to that rumor. Black magic. Oh God, we need to hurry then. What in the name of...
Welcome, Miss Carol. We've been waiting for you.
Ellie, what is this?
Don't blame her, Miss Carol. She's just obeying my order.
What do you mean? Where is everyone? What did you do to those kids?
Relax, Miss Carol. They were fine. I just simply do what you've told me, making friends. Now look how many friends I've made. They also share the same hobby as me now. You see, drawing is not actually my hobby, Miss Carol. But these symbols, they are the real hobby.
You sick little... Wait, what are you doing, kids?
I've sacrificed my parents and every adult I could find in this kindergarten, but it's still not enough. But now I realize that it is not the amount that matters, but
the person that matters. You, Miss Carol, you are the right person to summon the great elder god himself into this realm.
I am a 33-year-old male. I've worked security jobs most of my life in the graveyard shift. The place I currently work is a corporate building. To get the layout, there are 3 office building floors with infinite cubicles and cabins on each floor. The building itself has 3 exits on the first floor. There are always some employees pulling overnighters on the 3rd floor. My job was to keep an eye on the place till everyone left. This was midsummer, and while it's never boiling here, tonight was the exception. It was still hot after the sun had set. I came in to start my shift. We have a routine to hand off the keys, event log, and phone to the next person on duty. Despite its size, I am the only security person here at night. I locked the doors to the parking lot and the lobby doors. I swept all the floors and then found myself back at the desk. It was hushed, and it rolled around to 3 a.m. I had just sat down to eat my sandwich when the company's cell phone rang. The caller ID let me know it was from one of our outside call box phones. I picked it up and said, "Thanks for calling. This is Security Officer Peter. How can I help you?" All I heard was someone breathing heavily. I glanced at the cameras and saw the shadow of a figure standing just out of reach from the door in camera view. I asked again, "Hello? Can I help you?" The man started to breathe heavier and then laugh. It was one of those laughs you hear in a movie when the lunatic is about to do something terrible. I got up from my chair and started to walk out of the office and to the door he was at when it rang again. I quickly looked at the camera and he had his back to the camera. Suddenly, he spoke. "I'm coming for you, and you're gonna die." He hung up before I had the chance to say anything. Then the phone rang again. This time I picked up, and before he could speak, I let him know the cops were on their way. "You better leave!" "I can see you. Are you ready to die? The cops won't make it here in time." He then slammed the phone down loud against the call box receiver, and I watched him on camera take off into the darkness to the parking area. I figured it scared him off. I was going to call the police, but the location of this place would take them at least 15 minutes to get there. I returned to my desk and wrote what had happened in the incident log. About half an hour passed and I was about to do rounds when the phone rang again. This time it was from an unknown number. It should be an employee calling or something. I picked up and heard, "Where are the cops? I don't see them, but I see you." It was that guy again. I scanned the cameras and did not see anything. I went to the front door to look out. There was nothing but darkness and a few front floodlights. I warned the employees working on the 3rd floor and told them not to come down until I saw so. The next thing I hear is a loud thud against the glass windows of the day manager's office, which sits across from the security room. Another 3 loud bangs. I run to the door and unlock it. I pull up the shades and shine my flashlight through the window into the darkness. I catch the face of this man. He looked about 40 with long, stringy hair poking down and these wild eyes. He looked at me and grinned before slamming his head into the window to try and break it. I started yelling at him and told the cops were coming and to get the out of there. That's when he pulled the giant damn butcher knife I've ever seen and made a slicing motion like he was using it to cut my throat. This guy was crazy and probably on drugs. He continued slamming his body against the glass, trying to break it. He used his head to try and break the window, but managed to bust his head open, so the window now had blood all over it. I backed out of the office and locked the door to it. I then decided to wait for the cops as this guy was out of control. I watched the camera and noticed, to my horror, the sliding door to the garage was open. Now, it was common for people to go out to their cars and unlock the door themselves. It's just a sliding lock like the kind in department stores. But this is the last thing I need with this nut job running around. I sprinted across the building and took a shortcut to the garage. As I was doing so, I saw the crazy guy running up the garage pathway. I slid the door as fast as I could and locked it before he got to the entryway. He then slammed his body into the glass. He started to laugh and howl, and then held that knife up again.
He was bald with wild, long, stringy, crazy hair on the sides of his head, and his eyes were huge. I will never forget that grin as he mouthed, "You're gonna die! Die!" while making stabbing motions with that knife. Blood ran across his face from slamming into the glass, and then he ran out into the darkness. About 5 minutes later, the cops show up. They sent one officer. He asked me what the guy looked like, and I told him I had camera footage. He drove through the area first and shined a spotlight. The cop returned to tell me that he couldn't find anyone and had driven around the entire block and back area behind the golf course. I showed him the footage and printed out a picture from the camera. The cops never found the guy or who he was, but after that night, I never worked the graveyard shift again.
The day began fairly normally, bright and sunny, with people buzzing around the Meadowville Mall like worker bees looking for honey. We were in the midst of Black Friday madness, and my goal was to purchase a PS5. It was known as the golden ticket of gambling. I was there, weaving my way through the crowd of customers and inspecting each store when it happened. I saw the final PS5, the proverbial holy grail. I swooped down on my beating heart, thinking I had struck it rich. Before I could start my happy dance, however, a wild-eyed man dressed in ragged clothes charged at me while hollering like a banshee gone bonkers.
Hey you! You can't have that, it's mine!
I tried to be the calm one and tell him there might be more elsewhere, but this guy was crazy. He charged at me while reaching for the console with a rabid animal's claws. I wasn't about to relinquish control in this struggle of wills. Thankfully, a big, hulking shopper intervened and made an effort to calm the crazy guy down. He assured us that there might be additional PS5s available. The madman eventually calmed down and people started to leave. I paid for the PS5 and quickly left the store, feeling triumphant but a little shaken. My nerves were on edge throughout, but I knew it was over. How wrong I was. I was half expecting to see that nut job again as I drove, so I kept looking in the rearview mirror as I got going. But he was gone, absorbed by the mall shoppers. I felt a wave of relief. I believed I was free to go home. I then became aware of a vehicle following me, its headlights flashing like lasers in a sci-fi movie. My heart sank as I squinted. He was there. The insane PS5 user. I floored the gas and swerved through the maze of streets in an attempt to lose him, but he clung to me like glue. I finally stopped, feeling like an encircled animal. My voice trembled as I asked, "What do you want?" His breath was coming in ragged gasps as he stepped out of his car. His eyes were glassy and he murmured,
That PS5, I require it! Your lack of comprehension, beyond anything else, I need it!
He was far beyond just being obsessed. It was as though he were speaking to a mad wall. Then, with one hand reaching into his coat, he withdrew a rough piece of metal that could be used as a crude weapon to cause serious harm. As quickly as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs, I handed over the PS5 as fear swept through me. He grabbed it as if it were his long-lost lover, his eyes turning into twin searchlights, and then he just vanished into the night. I was shaking hysterically as I made my way home, thinking what a disaster Black Friday had been. Worst of all, it wasn't over yet. He wasn't just some irrational nutcase, but psycho dude. The plan he had, it turns out, would make your skin crawl. He had been stalking me before the mall, I discovered after doing some investigation. He had picked me as his victim, and the PS5 was just the bait. He was a real-life psycho who engaged in perverse games. It's at this point that the narrative turns gloomier. 1 week later, I got a mysterious package with a USB drive. I plugged it into my computer out of curiosity and mild fright. When the screen finally came to life, there he was, the psycho himself, with that same crazed expression. His voice began to speak, and it was utterly insane. He scoffed.
I hope you're having fun with your precious PS5, but I have another surprise in store for you. Something thrilling.
As the video went on, I experienced a chill up my spine. He admitted that he had installed covert cameras throughout my home to keep an eye on my every move. He showed me a video from the day that he had pursued me out of the mall. He had complete knowledge of all my habits and daily activities. He hissed.
I want you to play a game, a contest of wits. I'm always going to be looking. If you follow my advice, you might survive to see another day.
Adrenaline flooded my veins and my heart beat like a drum. It was like being in a real-life horror movie, and I had no idea what the hell I had gotten myself into. A series of strange and dangerous challenges were issued by the psycho maniac, each of which pushed me to the limit. I had no choice but to participate if I wanted to continue breathing, because it was a game of survival and a living nightmare. I became aware that I was entangled in a dangerous dance with a lunatic as the days turned into weeks. He constantly planned ahead, watched, and waited. It was a never-ending nightmare with no sign of an end in sight. A twisted tale of obsession and terror that kept me living in constant fear, with the psycho man as the puppeteer pulling my strings. Black Friday had grown into the darkest chapter of my life. I realized I had to outsmart the insane mind that had trapped me in its web of madness if I wanted to get out of this terrifying nightmare.
Having to work the night shift at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was not something I ever imagined doing. But desperate times demand desperate measures. My name is Mike, and I heard all the rumors about this location, including the animatronics that moved on their own, the eerie laughter that echoed in the night, and the enigmatically disappearing night guards in the past. Despite the unsettling tales, I accepted the job because I needed the money. The manager, Mr. Smith, smiled at me when I arrived on my first night. He led me into the security office, a dimly lit space with a single desk, several monitors, and little else. Airborne was the lingering aroma of stale pizza boxes. Mr. Smith said, his voice quiet. Here's the deal, Mike. You'll be here from 12 to 6 o'clock. It's your responsibility to watch the cameras, ensure that the animatronics remain in their proper locations, and prevent them from getting close to the office. Trying to keep my anxiety under wraps, I responded. Got it. Mr. Smith left as the clock struck 12, leaving just the hum of the security apparatus and me. I took a quick look at the camera feeds and saw Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate in line on the stage with Freddy Fazbear and his group of animatronic friends, all appearing to be lifeless. However, something about their icy, unblinking eyes gave me chills. As I kept an eye on the animatronics, hours slowly passed. But as the evening wore on, things began to seem off. I saw Bonnie on camera, lurking in the shadows of the dining area after he left the stage. I muttered to myself, trying to slow my heartbeat. Okay, Bonnie, just remain where you are. I was aware of the wandering tendencies of these animatronics, but experiencing it firsthand was another matter. Bonnie moved slowly toward the office, and I wanted him to do so. As the minutes dragged on, the wall clock appeared to be ticking even more slowly. Chica abruptly left the stage as well, but I caught a glimpse of her coming my way on a different camera. I picked up the desk phone and called Mr. Smith as panic began to well up inside of me. On the first ring, he responded. He asked with a worried tone, Mike, what's going on? I stumbled. Bonnie and Chica are on the move. What do I do? It's just a software bug, Mr. Smith said. They occasionally experience some sleeplessness at night. Just watch them and use the security doors if they get too close. They get a little restless at night. However, the unease persisted as I hung up. I only felt marginally more at ease. I changed to the lens that was capturing Foxy's Pirate Cove. Foxy continued to stand there, peering out from behind the curtain.
You can't hide from us, Mike. You can't hide from us, Mike.
I looked at the camera as my heart leaped into my throat. Both Mr. Smith's voice and one of the animatronics were not the source of the voice. I checked the hallway outside the office, but nothing was there. The animatronics became more hostile as the night wore on. Freddy Fazbear was now hiding in the shadows next to the office door after leaving the stage. In the distance, I could hear their robotic movements and a tremulous laugh. Since the battery was getting low and the security doors consumed a lot of power, I knew I had to use them to protect myself. I had to be careful because there was only 15% power left. I heard a soft childlike giggle as the office lights began to flicker. Even though I turned around, nothing was there. The laughter persisted, intensifying and turning ominous. I yelled, my voice shaking. "Who's there?" No one spoke up, but the laughter increased in volume and reverberated throughout the space. My heart was thumping in my chest as I slammed the door shut and locked it. I gave the cameras one last look and saw Freddy Fazbear's face pressed up against the glass. The power gauge on my flashlight flashed 5%. The office went completely dark and I was surrounded by laughter. I sat in the corner and prayed that the night would come to an end. Finally, the time reached 6 in the morning and the sun started to rise. With their mechanical motion slowing, the animatronics withdrew to the stage. An eerie silence replaced the laughter as it faded away. My legs grew weak from fear as I stumbled out of the office. The entrance had Mr. Smith waiting for me. "Michael, congratulations!" He smiled and said, "You survived your first night." I wanted to stop right away, but I wasn't able to. I was in need of the cash. I had the unsettling impression that the horrors of that night were far from over as I left Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. There were still 5 more nights to go, and I had no idea what other nightmares lay in store for me. When we were younger, in the late 1990s, my brother and I shared a room and had Furbies. Furbish, our new robot friend, caught our attention at first because of its large expressive eyes and ability to speak its own language. However, the novelty of the Furby eventually wore off, and it was relegated to the back of our disorganized toy shelf. We removed the batteries to save energy, but we also did it to prevent the device from unannounced turning on and chattering away in the middle of the night. We had no idea that choosing to silence Furby would lead to a terrifying incident. After a few months, the Furby was no more than another forgotten childhood memory. Action figures, video game posters, and a hazy nightlight could all be found in our room, which served as a haven. In the soft, cozy darkness of our room, my brother and I had grown accustomed to sharing stories and stealing one another's secrets. On one of these typical nights, the bizarre events began. The room was buzzing with whispers as we slept in our beds. School, our preferred cartoons, and the mysteries that captivated our young minds were all topics of conversation between my brother and I. With the exception of the occasional creak of the floorboards and the distant hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the space was the soft murmur of our voices. Next, a voice abruptly interrupted the quiet night. It was a voice that gave us the chills and made the blood in our veins freeze. Furby had been silent until now, but we knew we heard him speaking. Its voice was mechanized, unsettling, and seemed to be filled with an unnatural joy. It prompted, "Would you like to play?" I was scared, and so was my brother. The room appeared to grow colder as the air grew heavy with an enigmatic presence. With the batteries out, the Furby was supposed to be inactive. But there it was, speaking in its unsettling voice. It asked again, each time making the next question more unsettling than the previous. "Do you want to play?" My brother finally broke the awkward silence. "You hear that, right?" As I continued to stare at the Furby, I couldn't help but nod. I did, without a doubt. The internal struggle between fear and curiosity compelled us to look into it. We moved cautiously toward the Furby while our hearts were thumping. When we checked it, the battery compartment was empty. My brother carefully picked up the Furby and gave it a quick look. "Maybe it's some kind of glitch?" he said, but the fear in his eyes made his attempt at logic obvious. As he turned it over in his hands, the Furby abruptly uttered another word, this time sounding slightly more urgent. "Come closer." My brother dropped the Furby as if it burned him, and in our haste to get away, we both stumbled back, tripping over one another. "No way," I uttered in a whisper that was barely audible. "This isn't possible." Once more in a state of panic, we met eyes and looked for a solution. The Furby stayed put, its plastic eyes seeming to be fixed on us. "What do we do?" my brother questioned. After inhaling deeply, I quickly swallowed. "I don't know. Maybe we should just throw it away." The two of us grabbed it off the ground with our trembling hands without thinking. We hastily left our room and went into the kitchen, where we threw the cursed toy into the trash. Even after we closed the lid and fell asleep, the eerie voice of the Furby echoed in our ears. We tried to ignore the voice coming from the kitchen as we hid under our covers with beads of sweat on our foreheads. The Furby appeared to be calling out to us, pleading for our attention. The night felt endless, filled with fear and uncertainty. We couldn't sleep a wink. Eventually, as exhaustion overcame our fear, we fell into a restless sleep. The next morning when we awoke, the Furby was no longer in the trash can. We looked everywhere, but there was no sign of it. We never saw it again, and we never figured out what had given it life that night. My brother and I are still unsure if we actually heard it or if it was all in our heads. But one thing is certain. We still have nightmares about the time the Furby asked us to play, serving as a constant reminder that some childhood toys are better left in the past.
Did you know there's a Tinder for the dark web? Yeah, it's true. I was never that good looking when it comes to impressing girls. After being tired and depressed from being single for too long, I heard about the dark web. There, I stumbled upon a dark version of Tinder. People with all kinds of disabilities or weird personalities searched for their ideal matches. One night, I got matched with a girl named Allison. All her pictures were taken from her back. She had long brown hair and sitting on the edge of a bed. She was also the first one to text me.
Hi, Allison here.
Hi, Liam this side.
So, you come here often?
Not often enough.
Do you have a girlfriend?
No, been single for a long time now. After a few days of small talk, Allison asked me if I would like to meet her. She said that she feels a strong connection towards me and she wants to spend time with me. Let alone being single, that was the first time in my life any girl showed interest in me. I had to agree. Allison gave me her address and it was in such a run-down part of town. We agreed to meet Thursday for our Netflix and chill date. Around 5, I cleaned myself up, put on some of my nicer clothes, and left the house. I felt incredible. I had a spring in my step and protection in my pocket. If only I could have seen where this day would go, I might have had the sense to stay home. I rounded the corner to her apartment block and stared up in grim fascination. This place looked terrible. It was like a caricature of urban decay, a relic of a bygone time that the years had not treated well. I laughed to myself in the relief that she lived on the ground floor. I wasn't going to have to venture into the sketchy hallways of this building. I made my way over to her door, apartment 13. I braced myself, took a breath. Just be cool, and knocked on the door. No answer. I double-checked the number and knocked again. Nothing. I walked around to the side window and peered through the bars to see if I could see her inside, but I could barely make out anything. The room looked nearly empty. I tried the door once more, but still no answer. I heard footsteps inside and the faint sound of a door closing. This must be her. She's coming to let me in now. But still, nothing. Curiosity got the better of me and I tried the door. Allison? The door creaked open. The place was a catastrophe. A wrecked open space punctuated by a couple of pieces of smashed furniture and trash. Something was wrong here. I continued to venture through the awful place, calling Allison's name as I went. Allison? Hey, it's me, Liam. Allison? I checked the first couple of rooms in the hallway and found nothing, but my heart sank as I walked into what I assumed was the kitchen area. That's where I saw her. She was laid out on the floor like a rag doll. Her body wasn't moving at all. My instincts kicked in and I ran over to her in an attempt to help. I cradled her lifeless body in a panic as I tried to work out what the heck happened to her. Her neck was bruised like she'd been strangled, but she was still warm, color fading from her face with each passing moment. I had no idea what to do. I started frantically yelling for help, but there was no reply. I took a deep breath, collected myself, and pulled out my phone to call 911. The second my hand clutched onto my phone, I felt it vibrate in my hand. New Tinder message from Allison. I opened it without hesitation.
I'm so happy you found me.
I felt ill. What the frack is going on here? Before I had time to wrap my head around the situation, I heard a sound that chilled me to my bones. Her phone vibrated in her purse. I pulled it out, hoping that it might offer me some answers. There it was, on the screen. New Tinder message from Liam. I'm so happy I found you. I couldn't suppress the need to vomit any longer. My body gave in and I collapsed onto the floor. When I pulled myself together, I started to scroll through the Tinder conversation on her phone. It was nearly identical to the one on mine. Nearly. Minor details changed and roles were reversed in the conversation. On her phone, I asked her to meet me here. Before I even had time to try and figure out what had happened or calculate how monumentally messed up I was, the sirens rolled in. Pretty soon, I was handcuffed in the back of a cop car. Since then, I've been protesting my innocence so hard that I've not even had time to process what happened. I've not slept a wink, and with each passing hour, my pleas for understanding began to sound more and more like ramblings of a madman. I'm being recalled for further questioning tomorrow. I'm certain I'll go to jail for a murder I didn't commit. I wish I had never gone to the dark web. My name is Ryan, and I work as an employee in the Home Depot. I've been working here for 5 years, so for some new kids or part-timers, they see me as a veteran they look up to. Although I have some life experience handling difficult customers, there is one customer that I will never forget in my entire life. That day, it all starts like usual. I help open the shop, restocking and organizing items, wipe some floors, and help around if there are any customers in need of assistance. After helping a customer, I looked at a strange woman standing in the hardware section. The woman looks skinny and has pale skin. She has a creepy face that looks as if she had lived for hundreds of years. The woman gives me the creeps, but since she's a customer, I'm obliged to assist. However, before I came to assist her, my junior Casey asked for my help. Hey Ryan, could you help me organize these lamps? The manager told me to be done before lunch. Oh? Yeah, sure, Casey. I approach Casey to help him, while the strange woman goes into the hardware section. Man, I can't believe working in Home Depot could be this tough. Yeah, I can understand that. I was just like you when I started working here. Yeah, I mean, when I came as a customer, I thought the jobs would be pretty easy. Just relax. Take your time, Casey. I'm sure you'll be just fine. Yeah, I'm sure if I worked as long as you do, I would say the same thing. Casey is a good kid. He just needs to get used to the job like everyone else. Suddenly, I had an idea, which I would regret for my whole life. You know what? Why don't you go help that lady in the hardware section? I'm sure it'll be a good lesson and experience for you. But Ryan, the manager told me to arrange these lamp boxes, or he'll... Let me take care of the situation here. Don't worry, I'll tell the manager you did this by yourself. Okay, if you say so. Casey goes to the hardware section to help the strange lady while I take care of his duty. Not even 5 minutes after he went to the hardware section, I heard Casey scream. Ah! I quickly rushed to the hardware section and found Casey lying on the ground. There is a nail stuck on his arm. I quickly approach him to check his condition. Casey, are you okay?
Ah! She stabbed me!
That's what he gets for interrupting my lunch.
I looked at the strange lady and was shocked to find her holding some nails with her mouth. When I looked closely, she's not just holding the nails in her mouth, but sucking them like a kid drinking orange juice with a straw. Ma'am, I need you to stop whatever you're doing and will ask you to kindly leave the store.
Oh, but I will pay for these nails. You see, I have told that young man that I have anemia. I need to fill up my daily dose of iron, and these nails are a quick source of it.
The strange lady continued to sucking the nails. Ma'am, if you do not comply, then I'll be forced to call the security here.
Are you trying to stop me like that young man? I warned you, it will not end well.
I decided to call the security after I brought Casey to the medic room. Suddenly, something sharp passed my cheek. Ow! What the hell? It was nails. The strange lady shoots the nails from her mouth like a blow dart.
I tried to bring Casey out of there as fast as I could, but she continuously showered us with nails.
Someone help! Help! There's a crazy lady out here! Help!
Luckily, the security guards heard me. They quickly apprehended the lady and forced her to leave. The doctor said to me that Casey will be all right, as the wound, it's not too deep. However, because of today's incident, he's forced to go home early, while I volunteered to work overtime to cover his duties. At night, I was reorganizing some products in the paint section when I heard some noises in the hardware section. After what happened today, I was afraid to go there by myself. I was going to call the security guards, but I remember that one guard is patrolling outside while the other has gone to the restroom. I don't know what comes to me, but I took the biggest brush I could find and went to the hardware section. The Home Depot has been closed for a while. That is why some sections, like the hardware section, have been almost completely dark. I took my portable flashlight and pointed at the source of the noises, and my heart skipped a beat.
Looks like I've been found out. Again.
You crazy freaks! Get out of here or I'll tell the guards!
Oh? But you can't, since they are all too busy right now.
Crap! She knew the guards aren't here right now.
You know, apparently these nails are not a very good source of iron. If that's the case, then I think I need to take it directly from the source.
What do you mean? She opened her mouth and two fangs suddenly appeared, and in an instant she leapt onto me. I dodged and quickly tried to escape from the hardware section as fast as I could. When I turned my head, I saw the strange lady chasing me while opening her mouth, as if she were ready to have a meal. I tried to lose her between the sections and tried to hide in the darkness. When I found some unopened boxes, I hid myself there and waited for the lady to pass through. The strange lady looked around while grinning and licking her fangs with her tongue.
Where are you?
Apparently, she did not see me as I hid behind the boxes and walked past Thru from my hiding location. I tried to escape before she found me, but as I'm about to stand, the lady appeared from behind.
Found you.
Ah! I gasped in shock and quickly tried to leave. Unfortunately, luck is not on my side today. I didn't see the shopping basket left by the customer on the floor and tripped with my face landing on the floor. I quickly woke up, not wanting to be her prey. However, just when I tried to run, the strange lady jumped onto me.
Now, give me your blood. I need it.
Ah! Get off of me, you sicko!
She tried to bite my neck like a vampire did, but I tried to block her with my hands. Realizing that she cannot bite my neck, she changed her target to my shoulder. I screamed as she pierced her fangs onto my shoulder.
Ah! You crazy woman!
I tried to remove her from my shoulder, but to no avail. She bit me hard, as if her life was clinging on it. I tried to look at something I could use and found the brush that I brought fell on the floor. I quickly reached the brush with one hand and hit her head with the brush as hard as I could, and she fell on her side. I stand and raise my hand to hit her for a second time, but I realized she already fell unconscious. One of the security guards came after he heard me screaming. He quickly apprehended the woman and tied her on a chair before calling the police. When I looked at the strange lady's mouth closely, apparently it's not vampire fangs. The woman has stuck 2 nails in her mouth to make it look like fangs. The police came and apprehended the woman. They said that the woman has a history of mental disorders and is being taken back to the mental hospital. The police also told me that she is an avid fan of horror films, especially vampire genres. Since she indeed has an anemia problem, she tried to cure herself by sucking nails, hoping to extract irons from them. However, that night she intended to get them from the real source, me, a human being. I'm still working at the Home Depot even after that day. I tried to be more careful when supervising my juniors or finding any potential troublesome customers. I don't want another incident like what happened to Casey or that strange lady. After that event, I've come to believe that vampires do exist,
although not the type that is afraid of garlic or the cross. Have you ever had any hobbies? Mine was being a Furbies collector. I inherited this from my parents. They always collected Furbies. When they left this world at a young age, I was left with their collection, and as a way of remembering them, I set out to complete it. I never thought that my little hobby would put my life at risk and make me see something that no human being should ever see. I remember back in the day I used to spend all afternoon on Amazon or Wish looking for Furbies. That day, I found a pink Furby in the window of an antique store and immediately went to buy it. The owner of the place was a rather strange man, but what antique store owner wasn't, right? Besides, the pink Furby was beautiful, one of the prettiest I had ever seen. I was on my way home when I came across a garage sale, and that's when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. On a table was a black Furby with red eyes. Its face looked distorted, and its hair was in an intentionally bad state. I had seen black Furbies before, but never one like this. It looked like it had come out of a child's nightmare. I got out of the car and immediately grabbed it and took it to the owner, a goth girl who seemed nice. I bought it from her at a fairly low price, but before I left, the girl spoke to me from behind.
Hey, take care of Irving, will you?
Oh? Does it have a name?
Yes, it was my grandmother's, but I gave it a makeover. It was with me all my childhood, but I'm going to college and I won't take it with me.
Don't worry, I promise to take care of it. With Furby in the car, I drove home. Once I arrived, I inspected it from top to bottom. I know that girl was very fond of it, but there was something that made me feel uncomfortable, as if something in its look was wrong. I had already collected too many Furbies, maybe it was time to move on to something else. I left the pink Furby in the display case with my other Furbies and the black one in the dining room. I went to take a nap, then I would think about where to place it. When I woke up, it seemed to be night. All the lights were off, so I turned on the light on my bedside table to illuminate my room. But when I turned it on, there it was. The black Furby was on my bedside table next to the lamp. How can it be? I'm sure I left it in the dining room. Nervously, I grabbed it and took it back to the dining room. I was always a person who believed in energies and the paranormal, and that Furbies had something wrong with it. I thought about throwing it away, but then I remembered that the girl had said it had sentimental value, and I didn't feel like she was a bad person. Maybe I was overreacting and judging it for something that may have been my confusion. For the next few hours, I stayed there, eating and watching a TV show. But every now and then, I kept an eye on the Furby. It was still there, in the same place. A few hours later, I was going to sleep. I made sure the doors were locked and all the lights were off. I was about to go to bed, but before I did, I got a little thirsty, so I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I was pouring some water in the glass when I heard something behind me. There was nothing. I went to check the Furby again, but it was still there. I think I'm being too paranoid. I went back to the kitchen to get the bottle of water, and there it was. The Furby was right next to the water bottle. I turned around to see it in the dining room, but it was gone. No, this is impossible. It was there a second ago. I turned around again, and the Furby was gone. This has to be a dream. This can't be happening. The kitchen light started to turn on and off. Every time it was off, I saw shadows running. They were all running back and forth. I fell to the floor terrified, frozen with fear, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, all the shadows became quiet. No, they were moving. They were coming towards me. The dishes and cutlery from the kitchen were flying everywhere. The refrigerator door was opening and closing. It was as if hell itself had broken loose in my kitchen. Suddenly, the lights went out and silence took over the place. Ah! At that moment, I thought of nothing else, threw the Furby and ran out of the house as fast as I could. I didn't care about leaving it open. I didn't care about being in my pajamas. I didn't care about anything. I just ran as fast as I could without looking back. I stayed in a square near my house all night. I didn't want to go back, but I knew I had to. As soon as it was morning, I got back to my house before people started to leave for work. Once I got home, I was devastated. My Furby's collection was scattered all over the house. All the furniture was broken or cracked, and all the faucets were open. The only thing that remained intact was the kitchen table, and on top of it was the Furby facing my direction. In an act of bravery, I grabbed the Furby, put it in a box, and threw it in the house where the garage sale was held. It was no longer my problem. Once home, I fixed all the wreckage and relaxed in bed. I never saw the Furby again, but I'm afraid that wasn't the last day that strange things happened in my house. When I sleep, I hear the furniture move by itself. Sometimes things are not where I put them, and at night, I hear little footsteps all over the house. Every time I go to see if anyone is in my house, there's no one there. Next week, I'm moving out. The only thing I wish is that when I leave the house, whatever is haunting me will stop.